Not only did God reincarnate him by mistake, but also misunderstood him. He asked for an island with no people, but ended up on an island with beastmen. The divine logic was brutal and kind of clever. Armed with insane strength and a skill-copying ability, he survives, adapts, and makes friends out of former threats. Will this accidental paradise turn him into a legend? Let's find out. This story begins with the protagonist, Arata Todo, enjoying a sunny day. He stretched his body, enjoying the gentle sun, but at that moment his enjoyment was interrupted by a divine beast named Luna. She addressed the protagonist as a brother and asked him to look at what she managed to catch, a delicious-looking meal. It was a huge buffalo. Arata greeted her and praised her. She was great. She caught such a big prey. At that time, a divine beast named Eluga returned from hunting. He spoke. It seems he was late. The beast also praised Luna. Did she also manage to catch a big guy? Today they will have a feast. He brought with him a huge bear. The main character praised him and wanted to add something else, but at that moment an ancient dragon named Teltu called out to him. She almost knocked him off his feet in the body of a dragon, so much so that the protagonist even gasped in surprise. She boasted to him that she managed to find a flock of rock birds, and she caught them all. Well, isn't she cool? Arata confirmed that this is true. An archmage named Raina turned to the allies. She noted that it was good that they caught so much, but would they be able to eat it all? MC answered her that she noticed correctly. The girl giggled and replied that nevertheless, she thanked everyone. Then she would go cook food, and they would just wait a little. When each of them went about their business, the protagonist thought, looking at them. Beasts, a dragon, an archmage. The greatest creatures live on this island, and here he will live a peaceful life. He remembered how a month ago he ended up here at the age of 30. He was a Japanese worker of a black company. God addressed him by name and said that he, Arata, had died. He added that it was a bit complicated, but he would try to make it short. As God, he had accidentally caused him to die, and so he would grant him any wish and send him to another world. What would his wish be? The protagonist, who had barely recovered from what he had heard, hesitated for a moment before answering. Then he realized the inevitable and said that, in that case, he wanted to live a peaceful life on an island where no one else lived. Before he could understand how it had happened, he found himself on an island. He looked at his reflection in the water, and to think that he had overworked himself to death. A mistake by God? He also wished for a body that would not get injured or sick. God informed him that he had also given him a skill that could copy the skills and magic of any creature he saw. Arata wondered, even though he said so, would this skill be useful here? After all, he was on an island where no one lived. God replied that this would make his life more exciting. The protagonist had no choice but to agree. At least he didn't have to worry about illness or injury. He muttered that he had no experience in survival. But it wasn't that hard to survive on an island alone, was it? The protagonist remembered his past life, his job, but immediately interrupted his memories. There was no point in thinking about it now. He, full of determination, commanded himself to move forward. He would do everything in his power to live a peaceful life here. He wandered into the very depths of the island, passing over stones, large tree roots, jumping over streams. He noticed that his body moved better than before his reincarnation. He didn't get tired and easily moved in the right direction. And yet it seemed to him that there really was no one on this island except him. The protagonist looked around, but there was silence all around, broken by the cries of birds. The protagonist decided that he needed to find out what kind of island this was. But first, he needed to find food and water. Arata knew that if he wanted meat, he would need to catch some kind of animal. He wasn't sure he could do it. Suddenly he heard a rustling sound. Turning around, MC saw a rabbit. The protagonist was surprised. Were there rabbits in this world too? Come to think of it, rabbits weren't just valuable fur. He could eat it if he cooked it right. The animal looked at him with sad eyes, as if it understood that the protagonist was going to use it for food. Arata's heart sank from that look. He thought with pity that it was a shame to kill such a cute rabbit. But he didn't have much choice. He crouched down in front of the animal, asked for its forgiveness, and said that he would have to take its life. The protagonist extended his hand to it, but at that moment the rabbit jumped up and rushed at him. The protagonist almost lost his balance from surprise. The rabbit returned to its place and asked a question in its own language. Arata was surprised. What? This animal suddenly attacked him. Did he understand that the protagonist was trying to catch him? Arata asked him for forgiveness. He added that one way or another, he would become his lunch. The rabbit did not agree with this at all. He jumped up, intending to hit the protagonist, but Arata managed to hit him first. The rabbit drew a serpentine with its flight path and flew up to the tree. MC was surprised. What was that? Why did he do that? He did not know that rabbits could move like that. Or maybe this is a feature of rabbits from another world? The protagonist came closer to it. The animal lay motionless. The protagonist thought, did he lose consciousness? This was very convenient. He would not have to catch it. At that moment, another creature appeared in front of the protagonist. The protagonist noticed in surprise. A wolf? The wolf, looking at him, stood still and bared his teeth, looking at the protagonist. Arata cursed in his mind and thought that if he ran away from him, he might chase after him. But what should he do then? Where did he come from, and why did he appear here? Was he hunting rabbits? The wolf, meanwhile, began to approach him closer. The protagonist decided that in this case, he would do the following. The protagonist grabbed the prey, threw it high into the air, and ran as fast as he could. Having finally stopped, he hid behind a tree and looked around. Did everything work? No one was chasing him. He caught his breath and thought that it was quite scary. For a second, he even thought that he was going to die. The protagonist once again looked out from behind the tree, made sure it was safe, and came out of hiding. He thought, so this is what it is like to live in seclusion. Arata looked at the sky and noticed that it was already getting dark. There could be many animals in the forest, so it was better for him to stop at the beach. And tomorrow he would need to look around and look for a source of drinking water. Having come to the beach and found a secluded spot, the protagonist sat down among the stones and began to analyze. He made his way through the wilderness, but he still did not feel tired. He wondered, is it all about the power that does not allow you to get sick and get injured? Well, he still did not regret asking God to live alone. But will he succeed? Having settled more comfortably on the stones, the protagonist looked at the night sky. It had half changed its color, became light, as if the northern lights appeared in front of him. The stars shimmered intricately. For some reason, the protagonist became confident that everything would be fine. If he admires such views every day, then everything will definitely be fine with him. This is exactly how it will be. He stood on the rocks, raised his hands up, and shouted that from now on he would live on his own. No more gray everyday life. Long live his new cheerful life. Then he settled down more comfortably on the rocks again and fell into a sweet sleep. Waking up in the morning, he stood on a small cliff and gazed at the water surface. He said, well, to be honest, yesterday the thought flashed through his mind that, upon waking up, he would return to his native world. But this, indeed, was not a dream. How wonderful it was. The protagonist moved his body and noted that nothing hurt, although he slept on the rocks. A body that is not injured or sick. It is, indeed, magnificent. He felt wonderful. The protagonist decided that today he would walk around the island. Perhaps he would find some food or a source of water. Slowly walking along the shore, he suddenly saw ahead that someone was lying almost at the very edge of the water. He was surprised and quickened his pace. Approaching the body, he was amazed. A girl? Where did she come from? Did she wash up on the shore? It was Raina Mr. All. He realized that she wasn't even breathing. The protagonist exclaimed that he didn't need to think about that right now. He crouched down in front of her and brought his hand to her face. She wasn't breathing? Yes, that was unfortunately true. MC thought that if he didn't do anything, she would die. But he had only seen things like that in movies. Would he be able to revive her? The protagonist clenched his fists and thought, come on. He would have to do it. He leaned over to Raina, asked her for forgiveness, and said that he would listen to her complaints later. MC began artificial respiration. After a few manipulations, he realized that she had finally come to her senses. The protagonist was surprised. Wow, it happened so quickly. He had only just started. Arata sat down on the sand and exhaled. Thank God, he succeeded. The protagonist looked at her face and noted that she didn't look so pale now. But if you look closely, you can see that she is a beauty. But there should be no other people on this island. So why was she here? She was breathing, but still did not open her eyes. The protagonist thought that he could not leave her like this. Raina could catch a cold from wet clothes, so he made a decision and began to take off her clothes. He reassured himself that he was doing this only to save her life. So he took off all her wet clothes, embarrassedly noting that her underwear was the same red color as her hair. He immediately pulled himself up for inappropriate thoughts. Carefully, the protagonist put his shirt on her. After examining his work, he noted that he was finally finished. Oh yeah, he needed to dry her clothes. He built something like a dryer and hung up all the girl's things. Looking at the things, he thought, looking at these clothes, he was once again convinced that he had ended up in a fantasy world. Such strange clothes are only worn there. At that moment, Raina sighed and opened her eyes. Looking at the protagonist, she asked him who he was. Arata responded by saying that it seemed like she had finally woken up and introduced himself to her. The girl said his name in surprise. He continued by saying that it seemed like she was in trouble, so he saved her. Raina said that she understood everything, although, judging by her appearance and stuttering voice, this was clearly not the case. She stood up and sat down on the sand. The protagonist anxiously asked her if it was okay for her to get up. Raina looked at herself in surprise. She noted that she was wearing completely different clothes. She wanted to say that she was wearing different clothes, as the protagonist interrupted her and asked her for forgiveness. He explained to her that her clothes were wet, so he changed her clothes so that she wouldn't catch a cold. He thought that the girl was annoyed by this. He thought that this was something that he really shouldn't have done, Suddenly, she asked him if his name was Arata. He told her that it was. That was his name. She suddenly smiled at him and expressed her gratitude to him for saving her. The protagonist stared at her in amazement, not believing that everything worked out. He told her that he was glad that she was okay. After some time, her clothes dried and Raina put them on. The protagonist noticed that she never told him her name. The girl realized that she had completely forgotten about it and introduced herself to him. Arata asked her why a girl like her was unconscious in the sea. Raina told him that she was ordered to go to an island, also known as the farthest island of all that existed. While they were sailing towards him, a strong storm hit them. She thought that they would all die. Raina asked him if he lived on this island. He told her that it was not quite so, and thought about it. What should he tell her now? That he died in another world, and that he was sent here by God? So he scratched the back of his head and told her that he just somehow ended up here. He himself did not know how. She was surprised. How could this be so? The protagonist laughed and told her that he himself did not understand anything. Raina noted his confusion and said that there are many people with different stories, but Arata saved her. That was enough for her. The protagonist thanked her. Raina noted that he had nothing to thank her for. MC told her that since she got up, after she rested for a while, they would look for food and water together. The girl was not at all against his proposal. After some time, they went to explore the island in search of food and drink. After some time on their way, the protagonist noticed that Raina began to lag behind him. He asked if she was okay. The protagonist suggested that she take a break. The girl was not against resting. She noted that he was quite hardy. Arata admitted to her that he himself was surprised by this. Raina asked him in bewilderment why he was surprised. MC remained silent. He did not know how to answer her question. She did not insist on his answer, and said that this island still looked a little strange. Arata asked her if she thought so. Raina answered him that they had not sailed that far from the place where they were sent from. Why had no one noticed this huge island? How could their king not know about it? She wanted to add something else, but the protagonist interrupted her and drew her attention to a strange sound. It was coming right next to them. Suddenly, wolves appeared in front of them, surprising the protagonist. He thought they were the same as the one he saw yesterday. This was not very good. They clearly wanted to eat them. The protagonist told the girl to run away. The girl grinned and asked him again, "Run away?" She stretched out her hand and continued, "Why would she, the great sorceress Raina Mistelar, run away? That would never happen." The girl activated her magic skills and sent a magical wave at the opponents. They were thrown into the air, spun, and in a few seconds they were finished. The protagonist looked at the bodies of the wolves in amazement and asked the girl, "Is this magic?" She answered that it was. Arata noticed that one of the wolves survived and shouted to Raina to be careful. He covered her with himself, and the wolf grabbed his hand in a jump. The girl anxiously called out his name. The protagonist was surprised to realize that he was not in pain at all. The wolf was dangling from his arm, biting into the flesh of his arm with its teeth. Raina babbled in amazement. Is he really okay? She could not believe her eyes that he was reacting so calmly while the wolf was gnawing on his arm. MC told her that he was fine. He himself was curious as to why this was so. He asked Raina if the wolf had weakened due to her previous magic. The amazed girl told him that it was quite possible. Arata chuckled and said that if a weak guy like him hit an opponent, he thought nothing would happen. He shouted at the wolf that he was about to get it in full and hit him. What happened next shocked both allies. The enemy flew a long distance, hit a tree and fell. But it was not only he who fell. The tree that the wolf hit also fell, breaking. The protagonist was perplexed. This wolf flew as far as yesterday's rabbit. Can he really have such power? Raina looked at the protagonist in shock. She called him by name and asked him, who was he? Suddenly her amazement turned into caution. It was clear that she tensed up. Arata, looking at her, asked the girl, was something wrong? Raina answered him that as soon as she gave him a sign, he should run as fast as he could. The protagonist, who did not understand anything, was surprised. What was she talking about? Turning his head, he was speechless for a moment. In front of them stood a huge monster in the form of a wolf, who licked his lips carnivorously and bared his teeth. Arata thought in amazement, was this the leader of the wolf pack? They would not be able to cope with him. He was on a completely different level. The wolf rushed at them to attack, and the girl, shouting at the protagonist to run, activated her counter-magic attack. The protagonist noted that this magic was much stronger than the one before. Of course, he did not understand this, but it certainly looked more powerful. At this moment, Raina exclaimed in surprise, "No way!" Her magic did not work. The monster ran up to the girl and opened its ominous mouth, ready to swallow its victim. But it only clicked its teeth, because the protagonist, jumping, took his ally away from him. Surprised, Raina called him by name. He asked her if she was hurt. The girl answered that she was fine. Then she was indignant. What was he doing? She told him to run. The surprised protagonist noted that even if he ran, this monster would still catch up with him. She answered him that she knew it, that's why she was going to hold him back. Arata thought in surprise, hold him back? So she was planning to save him even if she got hurt. She was truly a kind person, and he couldn't let such a girl die in a place like this. He stood in front of Raina, blocking her with his body. Raina called out to him in confusion. The protagonist, ignoring her call, shouted at the wolf to attack. His opponent was right in front of him. The monster heeded his call, snapped its teeth, and rushed at the protagonist. Arata clenched his fists tighter. He knew that this demon wanted to kill him, but he wouldn't give in to it so easily. After his death, the god gave him a second chance and allowed him to live here. Having come this far, he couldn't die. But even if he couldn't defeat him, he wouldn't let Raina be harmed. His ally screamed at him in horror to run. He decided that he would make a way for the girl to leave this place. He said out loud that the enemy should not underestimate people. He struck the wolf with all his strength. The enemy flew up from the blow and disappeared. Arata followed the trajectory of his flight in surprise and wondered, where did he disappear to? What is this? The gift of God, a body that does not get sick and does not get injured, also makes him much stronger than he was before. The protagonist wanted to explain this to the girl, but she looked at him with such a surprised look that MC thought, God. He thought that from this moment on, his life would become much more interesting. He and the girl looked at the sky again. The enemy was nowhere to be found. Shouldn't a god who sends people to another world have more common sense? The protagonist thought God accidentally killed him, and he reincarnated here, starting his new life. He was told that he could wish for whatever he wanted. He asked for a body that would not get injured or sick, and also the ability to copy someone's skill just by watching them use it. Thus, he began his peaceful life on an island where no one else lives. But unexpectedly, he met a brave ally on his way. The powers that God bestowed on him are too great. Raina called out his name and confessed to him that she had never seen a person throw a monster so far. She laughed and remarked, "This is a common thing for him, right?" He protested that it is not. Rather, it is some kind of magic. She smiled and told him that even using body reinforcement, she would not be able to repeat this trick of his anywhere near. He means that he is stronger than her, a mage of the 7 stars? Is that what he is hinting at? She laughed again, and the protagonist remarked that it was a joke. In fact, he did not even know that magic existed. The protagonist thought, how can he get out of this now? He could not tell her the truth that a god reincarnated him into this world. She would hardly believe such a thing. Raina thought for a while and asked him for forgiveness. The protagonist was surprised. For what? She answered that she did not intend to interrogate him. She was simply too surprised. He saved her on the beach, and now he saved her again, only this time from a wolf. The protagonist rightly thought that he could not blame her. In her place, he would also be suspicious. But it is clear that the young girl should not be sad, since he is older than her mentally, and he simply has to somehow raise her spirits. So he smiled at her and told her not to make such a sad face. He was not angry with her at all. She made a sad face and asked him, "Is it true? Did she imagine it, or did he talk to her like a child?" The protagonist answered her that she imagined it. The girl accepted his answer. MC was glad that she even cheered up a little. He addressed her, "So it is cool to be a mage of the 7 stars? Raina asked him irritably, "What did he say?" Arata got worried. Did he ruin everything again? The girl meanwhile asked him, does he not know about the mages of the 7 stars? In what wilderness has he lived all this time? He had no choice but to answer her that he has memory lapses. She noted that this is a very convenient excuse, but if so, then she will tell him. Raina said that the Mage of the 7 Stars is a title given to the strongest mages in the country. They are so strong that they can even fight a dragon. Their fame thunders throughout the contingent. By the way, she is the youngest in the history of the 7 Stars. The protagonist noted that this is very cool, but the girl interrupted his delight, saying that even if she used the body strengthening at full strength, she would not have been able to repeat this blow. That is why she was so surprised. MC answered her that everything is clear to him. He thought at the same time that if he were on the mainland, they could try to kidnap him. Raina said that she had already rested. She suggested that he quickly find a source of water. Arata noted that she noticed correctly. He stood, listened to the sounds, and suggested that she go the way he chose. She was surprised this way. The protagonist expressed confidence that he heard the faint noise of running water there. After some time, after his long journey, the protagonist noticed that he had heard everything. There was a small stream in front of their eyes. Raina noted that he was right, and they had come a long way. He heard the sound of water from such a distance. The protagonist realized that he had screwed up again. The protagonist sat down near the stream and said that they only had to check if it was fit for drinking. MC scooped up some water in his palms and thought that since his body could not get sick, it was unlikely that something would happen to him if he drank dirty water. But Raina could have problems. Therefore, he had to taste it well. He sipped the water from his palm and noted how great it was. The water was so refreshing. It did not seem to be of bad quality. So he told the girl that she could drink this water without fear. He looked back because the girl ignored his offer. The protagonist was very surprised when he saw Raina standing at the table preparing food. The protagonist was amazed. He called out to the girl, but she was focused on cooking. Then she asked him what was going on. He noticed her immersion in the matter, and she had an expert look. The protagonist asked her in surprise, where did she get these kitchen utensils? At first, she did not understand his question. Then, having understood his words, she answered that she uses storage magic. Had he ever heard of it? Of course, he had never heard of such a thing, but he felt embarrassed in front of her because of his ignorance. Therefore, the protagonist, with the air of an expert, answered her that he understood everything. Raina saw through his deception and said that he clearly did not understand anything. The girl explained to him that storage magic is when you can put away and take out anything you want, whenever and wherever you want. The protagonist thought in amazement, space distortion? Raina continued that the storage space varies depending on the user's magic power. Since she is a great mage, she has about the same amount of storage space as a mansion. Arata was surprised. The girl told him that she would prepare everything and he could rest in the meantime. MC remarked that storage magic was very cool. He also wanted that kind of magic. Suddenly, a magic spiral appeared in front of his eyes. The protagonist wondered in surprise, what was this? A guess dawned on him. He stuck his hand into the spiral. He managed to use storage magic? So this is the other power that God gave him? A skill that copies a feature after seeing it once? At that moment, Raina called out to him. She grumbled she told him to relax. What is he doing there? He flinched at the unexpected question, turned to her. Then he looked at the place where the magic circle was and noticed that it had disappeared. She asked him if something was wrong. The protagonist assured the girl that he was fine. He chuckled to himself. If she had seen it, he would have had problems. What luck? Raina asked him if he could hold the pot. She needed to make a table. The girl activated her magic ability, and a sturdy, solid table appeared before the surprised protagonist's eyes. Raina said that all that was left was to get the dishes. Still, with the help of her magic ability, she set the table and summed up that she had everything ready. Arata exclaimed in amazement. Wow. Raina told him that, being an S-rank adventurer, she was used to eating outdoors. When she opened the lid of the pot, he caught an amazing aroma. He noted that the tomato soup looked very appetizing. His stomach growled from hunger. The protagonist was embarrassed and asked her for forgiveness. She giggled. He was acting like a child. Then the girl invited him to the table. He wanted to sit on a chair, but out of nowhere, Luna appeared on his chair. Arata was surprised. Who else was this? He looked at the guest, noted that she had fluffy ears and as many as 9 tails. The protagonist thought in bewilderment, was this child an unknown animal? The girl, meanwhile, tasted the soup and exclaimed that it was so delicious. She turned to Raina and praised her sister that her dish was amazing. The protagonist could not understand where she came from. What kind of strange situation is this? He called out to Raina. The girl looked dejected. The protagonist asked her what was wrong with her. The girl answered him that it was nothing to worry about. She was completely fine. Arata, seeing her condition, asked again, "And this is called fine?" He noted that Raina was looking at the guest. Have they already met? Meanwhile, Luna was wolfing down her soup. MC decided that if he left things as they were, she would eat not only his portion, but also Rain's. He pulled her out from behind the table and admonished her that she shouldn't eat someone else's food without permission. Raina called out to him reproachfully and told him that everything was fine. If the girl was hungry, then let her eat as much as she wanted. The protagonist objected to her. Children should be raised properly. The guest looked at him and then at Rain in bewilderment. The girl irritably repeated to him that everything was fine. Let him let the girl go. The protagonist asked her in bewilderment what was wrong with her. He put Luna in her place and told her that she didn't have to fidget anymore. Arata looked at her and asked what her name was. The girl, licking the spoon, introduced herself as Luna. He noticed in surprise. Really? The protagonist continued that they were about to have lunch, and this soup that she ate was his soup. The girl was embarrassed, feeling guilty, and asked him for forgiveness. He stroked her head and noted that since she apologized, everything was fine now. Luna simply blossomed from his gesture. Arata asked Raina if they had enough food for 3. The girl shuddered from his question. She was in her own thoughts. Realizing the essence of his question, Raina answered him that she assumed that the journey to the distant island would last about half a year. So there was plenty of food. The protagonist said that everything was clear to him. He asked her forgiveness for his insolence, but could she please cook something for this child? Luna and Raina looked at each other. Then the girl smiled and said that she would do everything. Luna, embarrassed, asked him if he was sure he didn't mind. The protagonist replied that Raina didn't mind and he wouldn't mind either. The girl was happy with his words, went up to Raina, and thanked her, addressing her as Raina's sister. The girl laughed and responded with the same courtesy. Then she asked them to wait a little while she cooked. The protagonist thought warmly that Raina was so kind, but it was not right to dump everything on her. He noted out loud that if he did nothing, he could turn into a secondary character. Luna asked him in surprise, was that his name? He smiled and told her that it was not so. In fact, his name was Arata. The girl understood him. The protagonist thought about it. He asked God that this island would be suitable for living alone, which meant that it had everything necessary for survival. He needed to learn how to cook to reduce the burden on Rain. At this time, Luna complained that she was very hungry. The protagonist noted that, if you think about it, he was on an island without people. But there are beastmen like Luna on this island? He asked her if she lived on this island. Luna agreed with a smile. The protagonist asked if this meant that someone else lived here. She agreed and added that she belonged to the divine beast tribe. But there was also a demon tribe, ancient dragon tribe, and vampire tribe. There are many different tribes. The protagonist thought that there was no human tribe here. After some time, Raina put the pot on the table and they began to eat. After that, Luna left and the others said goodbye to her. When it was already dark, MC put up a large tent. The girl noted that it looked pretty good. Now this will be their base. Since she left, they needed to talk a little. They entered the tent, and Raina began to tell him. As she had said earlier, being one of the 7 stars, she went to the most isolated island. According to rumors, there is a medicine there that makes a person immortal. This was their goal. The protagonist asked, was this their goal? The girl immediately sank, agreed, and added that she had gone with several knights. But considering the situation, it was unlikely that they had survived. In any case, if Luna was telling the truth, this was most likely the island. The protagonist thought that all the tribes she had mentioned sounded quite menacing. He wondered, but Luna seemed like a normal child, didn't she? Raina explained that using magic, he would have understood everything right away. This child had many times more magical power than she did. MC wondered, so that's what it meant. The girl continued that, frankly speaking, Luna was a real monster. If she appeared on the mainland, it would cause worldwide destruction. The protagonist replied that she didn't seem like that. Raina agreed and said that she didn't think she would do something like that, but she was just telling him about her real power. The protagonist was surprised to note that they were divine beasts and demons. The girl said that for ordinary people, they were all nothing more than a myth, although they lived on the continent before humans appeared. There are also tales of dragons that destroyed entire cities, and no one believed in vampires for a long time. So, calling her a monster, they really did meet a monster. MC noted that, in short, this island was not ordinary. Raina wondered who knew what kind of strong monsters they would meet. Until they thoroughly explored this island, it was better not to run into them. No matter how strong they were only people. They needed to be careful until they figured out a way to get off the island. The protagonist asked in confusion, what about that elixir? Raina replied that everything was fine. First of all, they weren't even sure if this island really existed, and now the entire expedition team had been wiped out. To properly assess the situation on this island, they would need real knights. MC thought excitedly that he had already decided to live on this island, so he didn't want anyone else to come here. He replied that if they wanted to leave this island, they would need a boat. The girl agreed with a smile and said that he would have to work hard. The protagonist wondered in confusion, when did he become her personal slave? But in order to live a peaceful life on this island, he would need her help. This body would not let him die. He could use a skill that copies other skills at a glance, and he could ask Raina to train him. Still, he planned to live on this island for the rest of his life. But she had a different view on it. So, until the girl leaves this island, he will work together with her. He must try hard to at least slightly ease her burden. The next morning, the protagonist, lying in bed, thought that he did not expect that he would sleep in the same tent with a girl. All sorts of thoughts began to flash in his head. He could not fall asleep. After some time, Raina got up and wished him good morning. She looked at his appearance and asked if he was okay. He had dark circles under his eyes. The protagonist replied with a smile that everything was fine. He would go and wash himself on the shore. The girl replied with a smile that he should be careful. MC went outside and, breathing in the fresh air, noted with a smile that the weather was still as beautiful. A lot had happened yesterday, but he hoped that today would be calm. Suddenly, Luna came up to him and wished him good morning with a smile. The protagonist turned around and, seeing Elug, asked who he was. He asked with a serious face. He was new to this island, right? The protagonist thought with a sad face, would today really be a quiet day? He could tell from his pose that this beastman was very strong. Aluga introduced himself and explained that he was a representative of the divine beast tribe. What was his name? MC waited for a while and then said his name. He asked with a serious face, what about the girl who was accumulating her magic power there? He would be only too happy to fight. but if not, she should stop. She didn't think she could do anything with that level of magic, did she? At that moment, Raina came out of the tent and began to look at them with an offended expression. The protagonist thought that she was a mage of the 7 stars, and she still looked as if she was ashamed. This guy must be incredibly strong. Suddenly, Luna called out to him with displeasure and noted that he promised that he wouldn't fight if she brought him here. Aluga answered with a serious face that he remembered, but they started it. She exclaimed that it was because he had a scary face. When she came, they treated her to delicious food. MC was perplexed, thought, so he is not their enemy? He called out to him and asked what the mister was doing here. Aluga answered displeasedly, let him call him by his name, without misters. In general, do they understand that they are on their territory? The protagonist apologized and explained that they did not come here on purpose and did not plan to stay here. Naturally, they do not know whose territory they are on. Aluga replied that everything is clear to him now. Indeed, people cannot come to Arcadia, the divine island, on purpose. MC wondered, is he talking about the most isolated island that Raina was talking about? The beastman continued, saying that they should be careful. Well, as long as they don't cut down the forest or do other bad things, he doesn't care too much. They, the beastman tribe, aren't very aggressive. But the demon tribe or the dragon tribe would be happy to give them a chase. The protagonist thought that, as he thought, there were hot-tempered races here too. He awkwardly asked if he could tell him more about this island. Aluga answered with a serious face that he wasn't his lackey, but he didn't want them to wander around the island. He would bring them the map. Just let them wait for a while. The beastman immediately headed towards the forest and started climbing through the trees. MC remarked to think that he was trying so hard to get a map for them. What a nice guy. Luna explained with a smile that Aluga always talks nonsense and acts tough, but still, he can be relied on, and he is kind. The protagonist replied that he thought so. Suddenly, Raina felt sick and began to lose her balance. The protagonist immediately excitedly picked her up and began to hold her. Luna asked in confusion what was wrong with her. The girl explained that everything was fine, she just felt a huge amount of concentrated magic. She can't do anything with her body. The protagonist, with a sad face, wondered if it was really that hard for magicians? Just think, she was in such a state just from talking to a resident of this island. Luna excitedly approached them and asked if it was her fault. Raina answered with a smile that it was not her fault, and, of course, Aluga was not to blame either. Her magic was too weak for them, so she was the only one to blame. Let her not look so sad. They better get ready for breakfast. MC, looking at her, thought that despite the fact that she is the owner of such strong magic, she does not blame anyone and takes responsibility for herself. Just think, and she is younger than him. After a while, Aluga returned and noticed that he found the map. At this time, everyone was sitting at the table and having breakfast. Luna, eating food, said with admiration that it was very tasty. The beastman irritatedly said that he spent an hour to prepare the map. So why the hell are they enjoying food? Raina came up to him and excitedly asked if he also wanted some. Aluga agreed, sat down at the table, and having tried the food, exclaimed with incredible admiration, "What is this? It's just amazing, very tasty." The protagonist, watching this, wondered, do all representatives of the beast tribes scream while eating? After a while, everyone ate and the beastman fell to the ground to rest after eating. The protagonist, while washing the dishes, wondered what kind of relationship they had. Luna looked like a fox and Aluga looked like a wolf, so he didn't think they were related by blood, but they acted like brother and sister. Suddenly, after a long silence, Raina thanked him. The MC was confused, asking if it was because he washed the dishes, but she had cooked so much delicious food, and it was the least he could do. The girl answered with a smile that she didn't mean that. Earlier, when Aluga started threatening, he stood up to protect her. That's what she said thank you for. The protagonist thoughtfully noted, so that's what she meant. But ultimately, he didn't harbor any animosity towards them, so it was a small misunderstanding. Raina stood up and noted that it wasn't about that. She didn't think there would be a time when someone would protect her. That's why she was so touched. Okay, it's time for them to return to the tent. The girl turned around and started walking away from the river. MC agreed and added that they hadn't asked Aluga yet. After a while, the beastman laid out a map and said that it was a map of the divine island, Arcadia. This is the territory of the beastmen, and here live demons and dragons. They don't get along with each other very well, but in the event of a war, both races would suffer greatly, so they only fight occasionally. The protagonist noted with an excited smile that they still quarreled sometimes. Aluga continued that somewhere around here live high elves. Although these guys usually do not go beyond their territory, for some reason they often encounter them. MC thoughtfully asked if this means that the species living on this island actually get along with each other. He replied that this is not entirely true. It's not that they have to get along with each other to survive. They have lived so long that they are simply not interested in fighting. The protagonist thought that at first he was afraid that he would have to fight a bunch of strong monsters. But fortunately, he feels like he can relax a little. He called out to him and told him that he wants to continue living on this island. Is there a good place to settle down? Beluga exclaimed in surprise. Is he serious now? Hearing his agreement, he explained that there is no place where the human race would be as weak as here. But he can certainly live if he wants. MC thought that with this strong body given to him by God, he thinks everything will be fine with him. But how can he explain this to Iluga? Suddenly, a strange sound was heard, and the protagonist, perplexed, asked what kind of noise it was. The beastman happily answered that it was the sound of the approaching Boar Emperor. Luna happily asked again, "The Boar Emperor? Hooray, the holiday is coming to them." The protagonist asked in confusion, "What kind of an emperor boar is this?" Beluga explained that, in short, it is a huge piece of meat, and a very tasty piece of meat too. Despite its mass, it usually lives underground, so it is very difficult to find. Raina called out to MC and said that she did not know if this was the one they were talking about, but there was a very strong monster called the Royal Boar. If it appeared in the city, the country would call on all the knights to fight against it. Suddenly, the huge boar itself appeared on the horizon, tearing all the trees under it to pieces. The protagonist was surprised to ask what kind of size it was. Luna noted that it looked quite tasty. Beluga happily called out to her and warned that she was still a child, so let her stand aside. She exclaimed in displeasure, saying no, they, adults, always say that, and then keep the best for themselves. He replied that only adults can appreciate this taste. Luna exclaimed in displeasure that she also wanted to eat delicious food. Beluga answered with a smile that this is how the world works. If she wants to eat the best pieces, then she will have to defeat him before he does. She also smiled and said that she will not give in to him. MC, watching what was happening, thought that they both seemed strong, so they should not lose. But will they really cope? The beastmen rushed towards the boar with wild cries. The protagonist became worried and thought that if they did not stop him, they would soon be in danger. They jumped on the boar, but it did not even stop, but continued to run at full speed. MC exclaimed in fear that it did not stop. Is it his imagination, or are they just riding it? Raina asked excitedly, what should they do? The protagonist thought that if nothing was done she could get hurt. In this case it was necessary to act. He stood in front of her, put his arms out to the sides, and prepared to collide with the boar. Raina asked in confusion what he was doing. They needed to run away, urgently. MC thought that he would believe in the power that God gave him when he reincarnated in this world. If they couldn't stop even that, they definitely wouldn't be able to live on this island. Suddenly, the boar crashed into him with incredible force, but the protagonist stopped it with both hands. Beluga asked in surprise, was he even a human? Luna happily noted that this was amazing. The protagonist said with a smile that since he had stopped it, the meat belonged to him. Let the boar forgive him. It was nothing personal. It was just the law of the jungle. He would become his dinner. MC dealt a powerful blow, sent the boar high into the air, and happily noted that the emperor boar belonged to him. A moment later, Beluga asked in confusion where the boar had gone. They all realized that the protagonist had overdone it and started screaming in horror. The protagonist felt very ashamed and started apologizing to them. Raina, watching all this, hopelessly noted that nothing could surprise her anymore. Beluga said that it was a rare delicacy. Luna noted that it was her food. The protagonist sheepishly asked them for forgiveness. Moving around the island, Beluga continued to be indignant. How dare the protagonist throw out the boar emperor? Luna irritably answered him that he was mean. Raina tried to calm the allies. The protagonist again asked his friends for forgiveness. Raina, as a truce, said that she would cook them something later, so let them forgive him. Beluga noted that they had no choice. Luna also agreed with the girl. Since she said so, then she also forgives Arata. MC thanked Rain for her help. Beluga suggested that since everything had settled down, they continue their conversation. He turned to the protagonist and told him that if he really wanted to settle on this island, he could live in this area. There were quite a few fields here, so he wouldn't have to look for food for long. The protagonist asked him in surprise, was that true? He thought that his ally wasn't very happy to see him. Beluga told him that it was because he thought the protagonist was a human. Harada was indignant, so he was a human. Beluga, crossing his arms over his chest, remarked, did he even understand? A human couldn't stop the boar emperor and send him flying with one blow. MC thought dejectedly that he really was a real human. His ally added that he was also very fun to be with, and it seemed that Luna liked him. So he could live here. The protagonist noted that he understood everything. He thanked the divine beast. Luna asked Rain, what about her? Raina told her that she couldn't go home now anyway, and she also thought that she couldn't survive on this island alone, so she would stay with Arata for a while. Luna was overjoyed, then they could continue playing together. Raina assured her that everything would be like that. The protagonist, watching their dialogue and listening to their laughter, thought that they were having fun. He liked this kind of atmosphere. Suddenly, he became wary and looked ahead. Raina, noticing his changed behavior, asked him if something was wrong. The protagonist turned to Luna and asked her what was that over there. The allies looked where the protagonist pointed. Aluga incredulously remarked, "Oh well, just don't let them tell him that it was a dragon." Raina confirmed that it was, indeed, a dragon. Aluga noticed new opponents and cursed. It was a dragon tribe, and a child of Bahamut too. The protagonist was amazed to see that the dragon was holding the Emperor Boar in its paws, which he had sent to the heavens. Why did this dragon bring this boar here? Suddenly, the dragon took off and released the animal from its claws. The boar began to fall on the allies. The protagonist shouted at them to duck. He wondered what was going on. If this was a game specially created by God, then it was a bad game. The huge carcass of the boar was approaching the ground, threatening to crush the allies with its weight. The protagonist raised his hands and held the carcass of the animal. He asked them, "Are they okay?" Raina answered that they were fine. Luna was amazed. Their brother never ceases to amaze them. Aluga noted that he was definitely not a human. The protagonist, peeking out from behind the carcass, shouted to the allies that a dragon was approaching them. They should all duck. When his friends did so, he threw the boar aside. His landing on the ground shook everything around him. Aluga called out to the protagonist. He asked him if he could stop the dragon. Arata expressed confidence that he could do it. Aluga remarked that it was good. Let him hold him back then. The rest is on him. He will take care of him. The divine beast took a fighting stance and roared. Luna wished them luck. The protagonist shouted to the dragon what he would get now and stretched out his hands. The dragon was surprised. Wow, how brave. Suddenly, he turned into a fireball, which began to approach the protagonist. Arata was surprised. What was happening? Suddenly, the ball seemed to crumble, and instead of a dragon, an ancient dragon named Teltu appeared in front of the protagonist. She laughed and said how brave it was of him to make her such an offer. All the allies stared at her in amazement. The dragon rushed at the protagonist, hugged him, and happily noted that her husband's body was quite strong and perfect for hugging. The astonished protagonist thanked her for the compliment and tried to push her away from him. He thought, well, it doesn't look like she has any bad intentions. And anyway, is this girl the dragon? What a problem. He turned to Raina and asked her what they should do about it. Raina suddenly weakened and fell to her knees. Arata called out to her anxiously and rushed to her. She replied that she was fine. She just felt a huge amount of magical power again. The protagonist objected. She was clearly not fine. He thought that the magical power of Iluga and this girl was probably too much for her. The protagonist picked her up and said that they needed to get out of here. Raina turned to the protagonist. She noted that they looked like she was a small child in his arms. Arata told her that she would complain later, and now they needed to get out of here as soon as possible. Teltu was indignant. Where did her husband go? Meanwhile, the protagonist carried Raina to a distant tree, put her at its foot. He asked the girl if she was okay. The girl was very sick. Arata hugged her and asked her to calm down. She needed to take a slow, deep breath. Finally, little by little, Raina began to come to her senses. The protagonist sat her with her back to the tree and noted that she looked very tired. A lot had happened today, so all this was not surprising. Suddenly, he heard some rustling in the bushes. Luna came out from there. She asked anxiously how Raina was. He told her to come closer, but slowly and carefully. The girl came up to Raina and sat down next to her. Her childish face was compassionate and worried about her adopted sister. She asked the protagonist if she and the others got too close. Would Raina get sick? He petted her head and told her not to worry. Raina really liked spending time with her. If she said something like that to her, Raina might get upset. If she really cared about her, she should try to suppress her magic power whenever possible when she was around Raina. That would be enough to keep her completely fine. Luna promised him that she would try to do it. The protagonist noticed that he believed her. He asked the girl if she could keep an eye on Raina for a while. The girl asked him what he was going to do. He told her that he would go and find out why that dragon had come to them. Approaching the tent, the protagonist saw that Iluga was holding Telta. She was struggling in his arms, screaming at him to let her go. He objected. If he let her go, she would chase after his friends. Teltu, seeing the protagonist, exclaimed joyfully. Finally, her husband was back. Iluga asked Arata, "Is everything okay?" The protagonist answered him that it was. Raina calmed down. He approached the dragon girl and asked her, could she introduce herself to him? She told him that her name was Teltu. She is a descendant of the great Bahamut and part of the great ancient tribe of dragons of this island. The protagonist thoughtfully drawled that he had heard this name somewhere before in some game or manga. Apparently, this is some kind of high dragon. The protagonist introduced himself to her in response. He added that he only started living on this island yesterday. Teltu, pleased, exclaimed, "Wow, So that's her husband's name. Sounds like a strong name. The protagonist thanked her and asked why she called him her husband. She was surprised. What a strange question, wasn't it obvious? He made her a bold proposal, and she happily accepted it. Arata was perplexed, wondering if she would remind him when he proposed to her. Teltu was indignant. What? But wasn't he the one who gave her the Emperor Boar? Defeat a really strong monster, spend magic power on it and give it to the girl. This is how representatives of the ancient dragon tribe propose. And he, her husband, sent her an amazingly strong monster. She had no choice but to accept his proposal. The protagonist stopped her speech, let her figure it out. First of all, why did she think that he gave her the Emperor Boar? Teltu told him that she was going to take a nap, but this gift suddenly fell from the sky. Going to the place from where it flew, she found him, her husband there. They can only choose husbands who are stronger than them. That's why she was so excited to meet a man who was stronger than her. Arata was surprised. Then why did she throw that boar at them? The dragon girl patiently explained to him because she accepted his proposal. This was her way of letting him know that they could eat together and raise a family. The protagonist, lowering his head, said that he understood everything. He thought dejectedly, obviously she had no bad intentions. But he had not intended to propose to her. Since this misunderstanding was entirely his fault, he needed to somehow explain it to her carefully. He admitted to her that, frankly, it was just a coincidence that that boar landed in the place where she was sleeping. Teltu asked him upset. So he did not really propose to her? And all this time he was misleading her? The protagonist admitted that it was. She thought about it, and then said that she understood everything. It seems there was a misunderstanding. Even among the ancient dragons, they are so strong that no one wants to approach them. She was so happy when she had a chance to get married. She looked so sad that the protagonist's heart sank. He asked her for forgiveness. She, not hearing him, added with resentment in her voice, like of course, as if there would be someone who would want to marry someone like her. She would have to put up with it. Aluga turned to the protagonist and told him that this dragon girl irritated him. The protagonist asked him to be gentle with her. Teltu continued to complain about her fate, that she was doomed to loneliness. Arata thought, looking at her, maybe she was considered an outcast in her tribe. Why did he feel like he had treated her badly? He began to think about how to distract her from sad thoughts. Looking at the Boar Emperor, an idea came to him. He called out to her and suggested that they eat this prey together. She asked him in bewilderment, together? He wants to trick her and then drive her away again? He took her hand and answered that she understood everything wrong. He meant that everyone present should eat this boar together. The protagonist added that she could also become their friend, and they would start with a joint dinner. Teltu said in surprise, a friend? Then she smiled and said that she was a good cook. She could make fire right from her mouth, which she demonstrated to him. MC admired that it was great. Then he would leave the cooking to her. She happily agreed to this. She would take care of everything. The protagonist and Aluga exchanged conspiratorial glances. Arata suggested that they ask Rain how best to cook this boar. Aluga supported him in this decision. Teltu said that she would definitely come in handy. Arata came to the place where Rain had left and told the girls that he had returned. Luna greeted his appearance. Raina, who was already standing firmly on her feet, said to him, "Welcome back." He replied that he saw that she had already woken up. Raina greeted Aluga too. He apologetically told her that he had overdone it a bit by using his powers. She reassured him not to worry, everything was fine. They were just living their normal lives. It wasn't their fault. Aluga looked at her in surprise. Then he became embarrassed. He asked the protagonist, since he was so strong, then this young lady was strong too. Was he right? The protagonist answered him that it was true, she was cool. Raina noticed Teltu and asked Arata who it was. When he explained everything to her, she noticed that everything was clear to her now. Then she was already losing consciousness and did not see that the dragon had transformed into a humanoid form. Teltu told her her name. She added that she was one of the strongest dragons on this island. Raina was surprised. Really? The protagonist noticed that she was that dragon. Teltu rushed at him, hugged him, and added that she was also his wife. He was outraged by this. The protagonist noticed Rain's reaction and thought that she would now think that he was a bad person. So he asked her for permission to explain. Raina told him that she would listen to him. When Arata told her everything, she sadly said that she understood everything. Maybe he had a blessing from Loki? He asked her in surprise, who did she mean? The girl explained to him that Loki is a god who brings trouble to the people he blesses. The protagonist did not know what to answer her to this. Raina addressed the dragon girl as Miss. Teltu told her that she could just call her by her first name. After all, they were in love with the same person, so they should stick together. Raina was amazed. What did she say? The protagonist thought irritably that this little animal was just making fun of him. Raina turned to Teltu and explained to her that it had only been 2 days since they met Arata. They were just friends. There was no talk of love. Teltu objected. So what? He had just met his wife a couple of hours ago. Doesn't a girl's true nature require a strong guy who could protect her? Raina, at a loss for words, embarrassedly said that she and Arata were not a couple. The dragon girl thought, people have so many different problems. At that moment, Luna disappointedly asked Raina, is this true? She thought that they were at least dating. After all, he carried her in his arms. An awkward pause arose, which was interrupted by Aluga. He apologized for interrupting their sweet conversation, but it was getting boring here. Maybe they should return to the Boar Emperor already? Raina caught herself, and it was true. They still needed to cook it. The allies went to the boar. The protagonist thought that he was starting to feel tired. As the allies approached the prey, they noticed how huge the boar was. Teltu transformed into a dragon. She was going to lift the boar into the air. Raina turned to Aluga. She would open the animal's belly, and he could gut it? He answered her that they would do so. Teltu lifted the boar and asked them from above, would this height be suitable? Raina answered her that everything was fine and thanked her. She thought that ever since she came to this island, she felt useless. She needed to maintain her reputation as a mage of the 7 stars. The girl activated the ability Floating Saber and coped with her task at once. When the animal's belly was opened, Aluga remarked that it was not bad. Well, the rest was up to him. In no time, he gutted the prey. The protagonist said in amazement that they were both amazing. Luna noted that Aluga was the best hunter in the tribe. Meanwhile, Aluga exclaimed that he had everything ready. Raina told him that he had done a good job. Handing him a towel, she asked him if he needed it. The divine beast replied that it would be nice and took the thing from her. The protagonist said that thanks to cutting up the carcass, they can now eat delicious meat anywhere. He thanked the hunter. Raina thoughtfully noted, but where to put it all? There was a lot of meat, and they simply could not eat it all at once. Arata asked her why they didn't use magic. The girl agreed with him. Storage magic prevents meat from spoiling, but she did not have enough space for it now. The protagonist asked her again, storage? That's right. Maybe they will put the product in his magic storage? Raina looked at him puzzled. What does he mean? The protagonist closed his eyes and simply imagined the emperor boar meat falling into the magic storage. It should all move there. Opening his eyes, he realized that all the meat had disappeared. Aluga said in amazement that it was very convenient. Luna remarked that the storage magic was amazing. Teltu hugged the protagonist and replied that this was expected of her husband. Raina stood silently, thinking about something. MC asked her if something was wrong. The girl laughed and asked him, since when can he use storage magic? The protagonist did not know what to answer her to this. She continued that not every 7-star mage has his storage volume. He noted in confusion, and really, why? He thought that his day would be long. Raina told him that she had many questions for him. He chuckled. That's how. After a while, the meat was ready. The protagonist was amazed and remarked that it was great. Aluga said that it looked amazing. Raina informed them that everything was ready. They could start eating. The allies eagerly pounced on the food. Raina, laughing, said that there was more than enough for everyone. The protagonist and Aluga simultaneously took one piece of meat with their chopsticks, but the protagonist was more agile. Aluga said that it was not bad. The protagonist also gave him credit for having a keen eye. The allies seasoned the meat with a sweet sauce that Raina had prepared. Everyone chewed silently, unable to tear themselves away from such a delicacy. The dragon girl and Luna simultaneously admired that it was really delicious. Raina noted that vegetables should be eaten too, and began to turn over the remaining pieces of meat. The protagonist saw these pieces and thought that this was the best part of the fatty pork. This was the highest quality fillet. This was the softest part of the boar, and the most delicious. It should melt in your mouth. He could literally feel how blissful it would be. It seemed that no one had realized what was happening yet. Therefore, this fillet would be his. He wanted to grab the tasty morsel, but Raina stopped his hand and laughingly said that they should share. Arata thought that he would not fool around with her. When finally everything was eaten and everyone was happy and full, the allies went to bed. The protagonist and Raina remained near the fire. The girl said that today was a very hectic day. The protagonist laughed and noted that he would have called yesterday that, but today was complete madness. They were silent for a while. Then the girl said that he saved her again today. He grinned and asked her, was she talking about that moment when Teltu arrived? It was partly his fault that she had come to them, and anyway he should thank her, Raina, for everything she had done. For example, she'd cooked delicious food today, and she had also organized the tent. He wished he could live a peaceful life on this island and use his strong body to protect her. Because if he couldn't protect her, he would be absolutely useless. The girl looked at him in surprise and asked him again, protect? She laughed quietly. The protagonist asked her in confusion, did he say something wrong? Raina answered him. She simply couldn't remember when she had been told something like that. Lately, she had been treated like a tool or a monster. The protagonist was surprised by this. He thought it was unforgivable. The girl objected. She thought it was normal for a mage of 7 stars, although she is still far from the strongest mages in the 7. But it was enough to look at her as the strongest being. No one even thought of protecting someone like her. She concluded that this was further proof of how strange he was. She continued that if the trio of Teltu, Luna, and Iluga were to appear on the continent, it would cause a series of disasters. But he, Arata, was on the same level as them. Although he was probably even stronger, no human could do that. The protagonist looked at her in amazement. Raina said that she did not want to pry into his affairs, but she still wondered who he was. Arata lowered his head and thought. In fact, Raina was the first person he had met in this world. They had only known each other for 2 days, but he was almost certain that she was a reliable person. And yet, would it be wise to tell her about his reincarnation? She might think that he was crazy, or that this was a stupid joke. If she did not believe it, his trust in him would be greatly reduced. Although who cares? Even if she didn't believe him, he would just go back to being alone. Besides, he didn't want to lie to this girl. He gathered his courage and confessed to her that he was born in another world. She stared at him in amazement, not believing her ears. He continued that he once died in his home world. Then he met a god who brought him to this island. That's when he got this power. He fell silent and thought that he had told her everything as it was. Even if she wanted to leave because of this, he had to. Finally, she said that it made sense. The protagonist was surprised. What did she say? So she believed him? She had a good point. He wasn't lying to her, was he? Arata said that he was, but it was all so weird. She thought, God, reincarnation? Then she told him that it was hard to believe that he met a god. But ever since she ended up on this island, crazy things have been happening. She asked him. He understands that normal people can't throw huge monsters into the sky. Right? Looking at all this, she can believe that he is from another world. He noted with surprise, is that so? They fell silent, each thinking about something to everyone. Finally, Raina noted that she now understood the situation, and his efforts could not leave her indifferent. He looked at her in confusion. Suddenly, the girl laughed and said that she was looking forward to their adventures together. It was as if a stone had been lifted from Arata's soul. To tell the truth, he did not expect Raina to say something like that. He thought that if she believed it, then only partially. He mentally thanked her for understanding. Out loud, he also laughed and said that he was also looking forward to it with impatience. He was very glad that she was the first one he met. A week had passed since the protagonist came to this island, and it seemed that he was starting to get used to this life. There was no need to worry about survival anymore. Thanks to Raina, he can live comfortably in nature. Recently, she even taught him magic. Thanks to the copy skill, he has mastered various types of magic. Everything he tried, he invariably asked her, "Am I doing it right?" And each time she answered him that everything was too easy for him. One day, he woke up, left the tent, and a thought came to his mind. Was he relying too much on the girl? He wanted to make sure that he was not bothering her more than necessary. Suddenly, a sound was heard. The protagonist seemed to have heard this sound before. At that moment, he saw a rabbit. He thought that this baby was the same species as the rabbit he met when he found himself on the island. Then he used it as bait to save himself. He felt a little sorry for his fellow. The protagonist crouched down and began to call the long-eared baby to him. The rabbit approached him, jumped, and buried its nose in Arata's stomach. The protagonist was surprised by this. Then he stroked him and told him to calm down. Apparently, he likes hugs too. He hugged the rabbit. At that moment, Raina came out of the tent. She turned to the protagonist and noted that he got up early today. He greeted her. Seeing the rabbit in his arms, the girl was surprised. He asked her, "Is something wrong?" Raina said, "Rabbit?" He noted that it was very cute, isn't it? He asked the baby, "Does he want to hug Raina?" The rabbit did not want to go into the girl's arms. He began to kick, and then pretended to be asleep. The protagonist asked him in surprise, "What's wrong with him?" If he does not want to obey him, then he will punish him. The protagonist, lightly as it seemed to him, flicked the baby on the nose, and the rabbit really lost consciousness. Arata was scared. He did it very lightly. He needs to learn to control his strength. The protagonist turned to Raina and asked her what he should do. The girl asked him a question in return. Did he know anything about this creature? Arata answered that it seemed to be an ordinary rabbit. There were the same in his world. She said that then everything was clear to her. Raina said that this rabbit is actually a disaster class monster. The protagonist could not believe it. What did she say? The girl continued that the disaster class included monsters that were much stronger than humans. If such a rabbit ended up on the continent, then even one 7-star mage might not be enough. He would have to call the hero and the saint. They would be able to defeat it if they fought to the death. Arata looked at the rabbit in surprise, then at the girl, and asked her, were they really talking about this creature now? Raina firmly answered that they were talking about it. The protagonist thought with regret that he would have to forget many stereotypes from the past world. Common sense did not work on this island. He answered the girl out loud that everything was clear to him. He wondered again, so that was why the rabbits were giving him such weird looks when their blows had no effect. He looked at the cute little thing again and mentally apologized to it for not being able to keep it as a pet. At that moment, Teltu called out to him. She shouted to him that his wife was here. She rushed to hug him and admiringly noted how amazing he was. He did not move at all, although she jumped on him hard. Raina also greeted her and asked her what she was going to do today. Teltu grinned and told her that she would like to play with her husband. The protagonist asked her in surprise, "Play?" He wondered, and what was she going to play with him? At that moment, the dragon girl saw a creature in his arms. She asked him, "Is it a rabbit?" He answered her that it is. Teltu exclaimed that it is very cool. Rabbits are so fast that it is difficult for them to catch them, and their size is small. If they escape, you will not find them, and they are also quite strong. The protagonist agreed with her on this. At that moment, Luna called out to him, and also rushed to him, hugging him and wishing him a good morning. The protagonist responded to her with a mutual wish and asked her if she was in a good mood. The girl answered him that he was right. Luna greeted Teltu, but she mumbled something and hid behind the protagonist. Arata asked her in surprise, "What happened?" At that moment, Raina came up to them and greeted the girl. Luna happily responded with a mutual greeting. Raina stroked her head and noted that she, as always, was full of energy. Teltu turned to the protagonist. She told him that she wanted the same. He was surprised. What was she talking about? Then he realized, would she like to be petted on the head too? The dragon girl smiled. He guessed her wish. Arata and Raina exchanged glances. The protagonist suggested that his allies make a competition out of today's hunt. All his friends enthusiastically supported his idea. He continued that the first team was him and Teltu, the second team was Raina and Luna. The team that can bring back more prey will win. Luna turned to Raina and told her that they will try. The girls supported her, that it will be so. Teltu told the protagonist that they simply must win. He grinned. Naturally, the protagonist announced the start of the hunt. The teams went in different directions. Almost immediately, Luna caught her first prey. The protagonist and Teltu were completely silent. Their result was 0. At that moment, they heard Raina call for help with the skill Windblade. Luna exclaimed that it was simply amazing. The protagonist noted that Raina was doing well. No wonder, she was an S-rank adventurer. She knew how to hunt monsters. And yet, was it just his imagination, or had all the monsters disappeared somewhere? Teltu replied that the creatures of this island were sensitive to strong aura. Some monsters were quite smart, so they were unlikely to show themselves to them. Arata dejectedly summarized that, in that case, they had no chance. He suddenly thought, Raina goes with Luna. Unless Raina does all the work. Teltu grumbled that at this rate they would lose. He agreed with her. They needed to do something urgently. But what good would it do if the prey was nowhere to be found? He did not have as much experience in hunting as Raina, and he was not yet accustomed to magic enough to support Teltu. The protagonist looked at his hands. Was there really nothing that could be done? And at that moment, an idea came to his mind. Teltu exclaimed, "Is this true?" He told her that it was. Let her rely on him. The protagonist sat down on the ground in the lotus position, closed his eyes and thought, his new body has excellently developed 5 senses. By concentrating, he can hear sounds in the distance. He began to listen to the voice of nature, then abruptly opened his eyes, jumped up from his place, and pointed to his companion in the direction from which some sound was coming. They rushed there, and soon Teltu exclaimed that she saw prey. In front of them were 3 rabbits. Suddenly, they rushed to run. The dragon girl shouted to him that they were going to run away now. The protagonist thought that these creatures attacked him because he was a human. But his ally is an ancient dragon, so they immediately ran away. He took a stone and decided that he would not let them escape. Swinging, the protagonist threw the stone at the rabbits. One of them fell, but the rest still ran away, dodging his blow. He was indignant. Seriously? His ally said that he shouldn't have looked away. She rushed after the prey, and a minute later returned, holding one of the rabbits by the ears. Teltu delightedly told him that she had caught one. The protagonist praised her. The protagonist noted that there was one more rabbit left, and he couldn't get away from it. MC dropped to the ground and called upon the spell that Raina taught him. It was called Wall of Earth. This magic formed the ground in the desired image. All that was left was to imagine a trap. At that moment, a wall appeared in front of him. Teltu shouted that the rabbit would easily destroy this obstacle. But to her surprise, their prey hit the wall and fell unconscious. The protagonist rejoiced. This was great. Now they had caught all 3 rabbits. His ally looked at him as if he were an alien. He asked her what was wrong with her. She answered in amazement. She of course guessed that her husband was special, but to such an extent, she couldn't even imagine. They returned to the camp. Luna met them. She greeted them. Arata thanked her. Then he asked the girl how their hunt went. Luna laughed and exclaimed that everything was great. Meanwhile, Iluga, hanging up the prey, also greeted the protagonist. He told him to bring everything to him. He was busy cutting it up. The protagonist was surprised. Iluga was here too? Teltu, hiding behind the protagonist, said, "This sacred beast calls names." MC, who did not immediately understand what she was talking about, nevertheless guessed. Teltu talked to him and Raina without problems, but she clearly could not communicate with Luna and Iluga. Apparently, when they were preparing the Emperor Boar, she was in an elevated mood and did not notice how she joined the company. But it seemed to him she had the type of character that did not get along well with others. Although, perhaps, ancient dragons just have a hard time making friends. He really wanted to help her. Luna asked him how their hunt went. Did they manage to catch anyone? Arata thought, feeling how his companion clung to his shirt, that Luna could talk to anyone. She was the perfect option. Therefore, the protagonist redirected Luna's question to his partner. She was surprised. What? Teltu hesitated, not knowing what and how to answer Luna. Then she finally dared and answered her that they caught 3 rabbits. To convince her, she even showed 3 fingers, confirming what she had said to her. Luna exclaimed in delight, "Really? They caught 3 rabbits?" The girl took her hand and said that it was just great. Teltu gasped in surprise. Luna pulled her close, hugged her, and asked her how they could do it. After all, rabbits are quite strong. It is very difficult to catch them because they run so fast. Teltu was embarrassed again and turned to the protagonist. He answered her that he had no time. Iluga was waiting for him and walked away from them. In his mind, he wished the dragon girl good luck. If she could take a step forward, she would no longer be teased. Luna distracted her attention. She asked Teltu to show her how they hunted rabbits. The dragon was confused again, fiddling with the hem of her suit. Then she plucked up her courage and suggested that Luna practice hunting together. Luna, surprised at first, enthusiastically supported her proposal. Apparently, contact between them was established. The protagonist mentally wished the girl good luck. At that moment, Luna called out to him, warning him that she and Teltu would go play together while dinner was not yet ready. Arata smiled and did not stop them. The girls joined hands and ran to play. The protagonist and Iluga looked after them with a smile. A month had already passed since the protagonist found himself on this island. Looking at the map of the island with his allies, he noticed that it was better for them not to go to the southern part. Iluga answered him that it was so. Young representatives of the dragon and demon tribe were quite aggressive. Most likely he, the protagonist, would not suffer, but Raina could well be in danger. MC said that everything was clear to him. And what can he say about the high elves? Iluga told him that they were a rather withdrawn people. They were unlikely to attack out of the blue, but he did not know how they would react to people. Luna added that spirits lived near them. If they were careful, they shouldn't have any problems. Arata thought deeply. So, this is what he learned. It seems that each tribe has its own hierarchy. Iluga village is home to the beastmen. Basically, they are calm guys. The elf village is ruled by the high elves, and the spirits are commanded by the high spirits, and they are revered as gods. He said out loud, if so, it would be better for them to first visit the village of the divine beast tribe. Iluga gave him one piece of advice. In order to be greeted warmly, it would be better for them not to come empty-handed, but for example, with the meat of the Emperor Boar. The protagonist thought, who would doubt it? He asked Iluga if he knew how to leave this island. The divine beast looked at him for a long time, then he answered him that there was no way. Arata was surprised. Is that possible? Iluga explained to him that the island was surrounded by a powerful barrier, so it would be impossible to leave it. But getting in is easier, but you need to have strong magic. According to their elders, this island was created by God, so that the strongest beings would not interfere with other races. Well, he himself can see who lives here. All the strongest beings are gathered here. The protagonist thought, the divine island of Arcadia. Once here, no one will be able to get out of here. Iluga continued that as long as they are all here, people can live in peace. Arata told him that he understood everything. The protagonist thought again. Still, this should not apply to Raina. Having come here, he thought about exploring this island. But for her, this is not the best option. She constantly took care of him. So, he would like to help her leave this island. Thinking about it again, he was determined. He will enjoy a peaceful life on this island for the rest of his days, and he will try to make sure that Raina can safely return home. To do this, he will try his best. Night fell. In the tent, the protagonist and Raina were talking. The protagonist summarized that, first, they needed to talk to the divine beasts to get permission to live. The girl thoughtfully asked him if he was sure they needed that. He told her that since they had already settled here, they should get official permission from the locals. Raina giggled. Only he could say something like that. The protagonist patted his head in surprise. Really? Continued that, in any case, since they lived nearby, it would be better to visit them. The girl agreed with him and said that she would go with him. The protagonist noted that since they had already sorted that out, Which of them would go to the bathhouse first? Raina asked him if she could go first. She'd had a pretty hard day today. The protagonist was not against it. She went to the bathhouse and he stayed near the building. Sitting down on the ground, Arata thought, of course, there are no bandits on this island, but some monsters can be pretty annoying. Raina would certainly be able to handle them herself, if it wasn't a monster on the level of the Boar Emperor. Still, it seemed to him that it was better to be on the safe side. He closed his eyes and listened to himself. Thanks to his amazing body, he could sense the approach of any monster by concentrating. Suddenly, he felt something. Was it his imagination? He felt something strange in the sky. Listening more closely, he made sure that it was true, and that something was moving right here. Someone's silhouette became clearly visible in the moonlight. Flying closer, Wilhelmina said, "How interesting." So she understands that he is new to this island? The protagonist stared at her in amazement. She approached him and noticed that the source of the delicious smell was found. Arata noted that she was looking down on him. Who was she? That predatory look of hers somehow reminded him of Eluga and Telta. Was this alien also one of those at the top of the food chain? She came down to him on the ground and spoke. Since she was the first to speak, she would be the first to introduce herself to him. Her name was Wilhelmina Walmeron Uoheim. She was a vampire, so she had been living on this island for quite some time. The protagonist told her his name and added that he didn't know how, but somehow he had ended up on this island. Wilhelmina looked at him in surprise at first, then laughed and remarked that something unusual had finally appeared in this boring hole. With his permission, she would like to try a new, exquisite taste. The vampire girl threw some crystal into the air, and it rushed straight to the bathhouse. The protagonist was indignantly worried. What was she doing? In 2 jumps, he found himself next to the bathhouse, stood in front of the door, barely managing to knock the crystal away. The vampire girl stared at him in amazement. He asked her indignantly, was she crazy? She arrogantly answered the question with a question. What kind of rude tone? And where did he get such speed? How could he, a pathetic little human, catch up with her attack? The protagonist answered her that it would not pass. She noted that for a human, he was really strong. She smiled slyly and summoned many sharp crystals. How will he cope with this? If he is so fast, let him try to stop them. MC cursed and rushed at the crystals, realizing that even with his improved body, it would be too much. He began to repel the attack, but no matter how hard the protagonist tried, he still missed several of them. They crashed into the bathhouse and demolished it completely. The protagonist anxiously shouted out Rain's name and rushed to the rubble. Cursing dirty, he shouted, "Rain, is she okay?" Suddenly he heard her voice telling him to wait, not to come closer. She stood there, terribly embarrassed, covering herself with a towel. The protagonist stared at her in amazement. She again embarrassedly asked him not to look at her. He, having recovered from worrying about her, embarrassedly asked her for forgiveness and turned away. He thought that he had been distracted and he needed to keep an eye on this Wilhelmina. She exclaimed enthusiastically, like, "This is the real thrill. Let these pathetic people continue to blush from head to toe. She wants to enjoy all the shades of their shame." Raina asked him in amazement, who the hell was she? He answered her that, in his opinion, she was a higher vampire. Raina could not believe her ears. Who? This unbearable vampire asked them to continue to be embarrassed. She had not tasted their shame enough. The protagonist got angry. What was she, an idiot, talking about? She told him that ordinary vampires drink blood. But for higher vampires, it is bad form. Instead of blood, they prefer to feed on emotions. She can be called an energy vampire. That's what she meant. In other words, she tasted the shame that Raina experienced. She smiled and thanked them for this refined taste of a romantic comedy. The protagonist wondered, had she gone crazy on a kidney of romantic movies? He remembered her crystals and realized that her attack was not that strong. She could have hit harder. But it seemed that her goal was precisely the bathhouse. It turns out that she had no intention of harming them. Wilhelmina, meanwhile, continued that the shame of young people is so magnificent. She smirked languidly, like, God, you can get addicted to this. She wanted to continue about what else she adores, but at that moment Raina gasped. The protagonist called out to her in alarm. Raina stretched out her hand and shouted at her opponent, "Don't let her think that she forgave her." After these words, Raina aimed her powerful magic blow at her. The vampire only laughed. She noticed that now she saw anger with a subtle shade of shame. She urged Raina not to stop. The blows of the 7 stars mage crumbled the impudent vampire into pieces. When she was finished, Raina herself did not expect such a result. She was surprised. What? Are higher vampires so easy to defeat? The protagonist also looked at the place where the vampire stood in bewilderment. Suddenly, an explosion was heard in front of them. Bats appeared, and in the blink of an eye, Wilhelmina appeared in front of them again. The allies were amazed. She teased them and asked if they really thought she was dead. The vampire thanked them for this dessert. They both reacted so amazingly. Then she took pity on them. She had already received a hearty dinner from a stranger. It was time for her to know her limits. She thanked them again, already for raising her spirits. But could they give her more shame next time? Modest people are her weakness. Without saying goodbye, she soared up and left them. Arata thought indignantly. Did she have to say that? Raina exclaimed angrily. What was she allowing herself to do? The protagonist, looking at the black dot moving away, said the vampire's name. It seemed that he was still far from a quiet life. A few days after Wilhelmina's attack, the allies went to the village. After some time on the way, Luna reported that they were there. The protagonist was surprised by what he saw. In front of them was a well-kept settlement with neat houses and well-kept gardens. But higher up, on the hill, there were also houses but different ones. Thus, the village was divided into two parts. He thought, so this is what the village of the Divine Beast tribe looks like. He imagined a more fantastic landscape, but it turned out to be an ordinary village. Aluga and Livia came out to meet them. He greeted the protagonist. The girl standing next to him was also glad to see them. The protagonist thanked them and asked the Divine Beast, who was with him. Aluga hesitated with an answer, and then said that it was his wife. MC and Rain were surprised. Arata asked him again, wife? Livia smiled, introduced herself to them. She added that she was indeed Aluga's wife. She was very pleased to meet them. Just like her husband, she is a divine beast. The protagonist, having dealt with his surprise, said his name in response, and introduced his companion to her. Then he approached Aluga, and ironically asked him, so he was married. It turns out, the guy was embarrassed, and said something like that. Meanwhile, Livia admitted that Luna had told her about them. Usually, her husband takes care of her, but lately, she had noticed that he had started sneaking out of the house. At first, she even thought that he was cheating on her. It was good that she was wrong, otherwise she would have had to drown him in the ocean. She is a fish-type beastman. Everyone laughed good-naturedly at this story. Aluga muttered that he was not so easy to kill. Then he asked his wife if perhaps their guests should first be shown the village. Livia replied that he was right about that. The protagonist and Raina jokingly noted that they were a sweet couple. Aluga invited them to follow him. As they walked through the village, the protagonist and Raina caught surprised glances from the villagers. Arata told Aluga that he thought these villagers did not have their powers. Aluga replied that it was true. They, the divine beasts, inherited the power of the great ancestors who lived long ago, and they are very proud of it. And the inhabitants are ordinary beastmen. They no longer have that power. The protagonist replied that he understood everything. So, creatures of different strengths live here? Aluga said that this was not so. He would have said it differently. Beastmen live in this village, and divine beasts live up there on the top of the hill. Raina said that they are like nobles to them. Aluga noted that it is not that they ask to be worshipped. The inhabitants themselves constantly call them gods. They hunt in the forest, getting meat, and the beastmen grow vegetables and rice. They just have different roles. Luna confirmed his words. Everyone here is busy with their own business. Everyone works. Aluga noted that she said everything correctly. The protagonist thought about it. He understood the beastmen. Since they have no strength, the only way for them to survive is to hide under the wing of the divine beasts. Living on this island is very dangerous. Anyone would do the same in their place. Finally, Aluga said that they had arrived. Arata stared at the large building in surprise. He wondered in surprise, was this their home? The protagonist asked Aluga what kind of large building this was. The divine beasts told him that it was Elder Phoenix's mansion. They, the divine beasts, were born with the strength of the divine beasts of the past. The elder still remembers those times. Luna noticed that Granny is strong. They cannot defeat her, even if all the divine beasts gather together. Aluga said that Phoenix asked to be brought to the mansion. Maybe they should go already? When the allies entered the house, Aluga turned to the elder, saying that they had arrived. Phoenix, with a pipe in her mouth, greeted her visitors. So they are the strangers Aluga spoke of? They seem to be funny guys. The protagonist and Raina were amazed. They never thought that an elder could look like this. The protagonist thought that the leader of the Divine Beast tribe also looked very strong. Phoenix said that she thought they already knew who she was. Still, it would be rude not to introduce herself to them. The elder told them her name. She is the one who unites the tribe of divine beasts. Surprised, Arata introduced himself. No less amazed, Raina also told her name. She expressed their gratitude for Phoenix accepting them. The elder waved them off, saying, "Okay, what's the big deal?" She doesn't like unnecessary formalities. They are their guests, so they can relax. Phoenix continued that she used to be called the Divine Bird, and many other names. When she is in this form, then usually she is addressed as the Red Bird. They can call her the same. She is a little irritated by the way the word elder sounds, as if she is an old woman. Aluga objected to her. An elder is an elder. She was one even before he was born, so objections are not accepted. Phoenix complained that he has not been able to watch his tongue since childhood. And who did he take after? Aluga was surprised. How can he take after whom? After the one who raised him, that is, after her. It became clear to the protagonist they look like different races. It was probably not a blood relation, but it felt like they trusted each other. Phoenix pointed to Aluga, who turned away from her indignantly, and told them that he was actually a nice guy. She expressed her hope that they would continue to be friends. She had heard a lot about them from Luna. The protagonist looked at her in surprise. Phoenix continued, "If Luna liked them, then they must be good people. Therefore, today they welcome them." She created a flame with her finger and threw it at the protagonist. Let him hold it. Everyone present was amazed at her action. The protagonist caught the fire in his fist. He said that it was sudden. At that moment, his hand burst into a bright, large flame. Aluga and Raina reacted with fear, and the elder smirked. Arata looked at his hand in the flames, confused. Phoenix laughed and praised him, and he was doing great. Raina noted that she couldn't believe it. The protagonist asked her what happened. The girl explained to him that there was several times more magic in this fire than in her mana reserve. She believed that there were even tens of times more. And Phoenix released it so casually, but she was especially amazed by how calmly he accepted it. Arata smiled and answered her. He didn't think that this little ball was so amazing. The girl said regretfully that this was not a toy for him. Aluga was indignant at how the elder was treating the guests. Phoenix, not paying attention to him, told MC that she liked him. She hadn't warmed up for a long time. The protagonist swallowed convulsively. The elder's expression at these words was not the kindest. Then she chuckled and told him that she had a bunch of noisy children here, so she would leave them for now. As she was leaving, the elder turned to Aluga, saying that she was relying on him. He could show the guests around the village, and in the evening, they would have a party. Aluga apologized to the protagonist for the elder. The protagonist noted with a smile that he had gotten used to such things lately, although he was a little surprised. After that, Aluga led the allies around the village, showing them how they lived. In the evening, all the residents gathered in the main square of the settlement. Phoenix, raising her mug, called on the residents to have fun. Today, the great warrior of the divine beast tribe Aluga brought them new friends. One of them is a monster who was not even harmed by her fire. Let them give them a warm welcome. The residents happily began to greet them. The protagonist noted that he even felt a little uncomfortable. Raina agreed with him on this. That moment, Luna came up to them and told Raina to look at what she brought them. It was worth trying. Raina thanked her. Taking the dish of food from Luna, she remarked that it looked delicious. The protagonist, looking at them with a smile, thought he was worried that Raina might get sick. Aluga must have asked the divine beasts to suppress their magic in advance. Then he also tasted the delicacy that Luna brought. Arata also admitted that it was delicious. After that, he took out a package, put it on the table, and told everyone that these were Emperor Boar cutlet sandwiches. Raina made them as a gift. Phoenix was surprised. Wow, this must be delicious. Raina offered them to the elder to try. Phoenix sniffed the sandwich and remarked that Emperor Boars rarely come to the surface, so she hasn't eaten them for a long time. After taking a bite, the elder almost squealed with delight. She asked her allies, "Is this really it? It tastes even better than the Emperor Boar's meat that she's ever tried." Phoenix hugged Rain and told her that she'd heard of her cooking skills, but she didn't think she was that skilled. Rain was embarrassed by such praise. She thanked the elder. The rest of their meal went more or less calmly. Suddenly, the protagonist noticed that it was getting noisy there. Not far from them, the divine beasts were having fun. The protagonist was surprised. They were flying. Rain sadly replied that it was true. They were flying. Phoenix began to justify her tribe, saying that the youth were just making a bit of noise. They shouldn't worry about it. The protagonist told her that it wasn't about worrying. It's just that they were already very close. One of the divine beasts, the largest one, was inexorably approaching them. The elder saw him and told them that it was Gaius. He is the fiercest of their tribe, whose ancestor was the divine beast hippopotamus. Gaius landed in front of them and loudly asked them who made this thing. In his huge hand was a sandwich. The giant turned to Raina. Did she make this? The protagonist thought, by this thing, he meant the sandwich made by Raina. The girl frightenedly answered the giant that yes, it was. She did it. He noted, like, that's how. He pointed his finger at her and told her that she would be his bride. Raina asked him in amazement, what did he say? The protagonist got angry at him and stood in front of the girl, shielding her with his body. She called him by name, not wanting him to endanger himself. Gaius fiercely asked him what he wanted. The protagonist was indignant. He comes suddenly and says such things. Who would like that? The giant showed him the sandwich and told him that this thing tastes delicious. His companion did this, didn't he? He turned to her again and growled at her to become his wife and cook for him for the rest of his life. Raina felt unwell. Luna asked her anxiously if she was okay. The protagonist understood everything. He thought irritably that the other divine beasts suppressed their magic for Raina, but this idiot, on the contrary, emitted it, trying to intimidate and subdue, as if he considered himself superior to them. In fact, he didn't care about Raina. The protagonist looked at Gaius irritably. The giant, stretching his arms, told him not to stand in his way, otherwise he would throw him out of here. The protagonist took off his jacket and suggested that he try it. Gaius created a pillar of fire, intending to attack MC, almost injuring him. Phoenix smirked. A duel for a girl? That's a good idea, but she can't allow the guest to be thrown out. It's not hospitable at all. She stood between the rivals. Gaius asked her not to interfere. The elder reacted irritably to his words, saying that he was the only one here who was disturbing the fun. Gaius huffed in displeasure. Phoenix continued that she could understand his feelings. The protagonist mentally called out to her, "Please let her not understand." Meanwhile, the elder raised her hand with fiery fingers and suggested that Gaius decide everything in a duel of divine beasts. All the villagers began to enthusiastically chant about the battle. The protagonist could not believe his eyes. How could this be? Raina was also amazed. What was this? Aluga grabbed his head. The protagonist turned to him. Could he explain to them what all this meant? The ally answered him that he would explain everything to him. They, divine beasts, respect their ancestors, so when they cannot share something, they give them an oath and then proudly begin to fight. The loser gives in to the winner. MC clarified, so in other words, Raina will be their bet? Gaius, hearing their conversation, answered instead of Aluga that it was so. Phoenix turned to the residents. Does anyone have any objections? Iluga was indignant. Of course there were. The elder remarked that he should not be mean. The guy reminded her that they were in fact their guests. Luna and Raina looked at the protagonist with concern. He smiled and asked the girl, will she let him deal with this guy? After hesitating with an answer, she finally smiled and said that she relied on him. The opponents came out to the center of the improvised arena. The residents surrounded them. Gaius growled in the protagonist's face that he would take her. Arata, concentrating, resolutely thought that Raina cannot be given to such an idiot. Phoenix proclaimed that if Gaius wins, Raina will become his wife. And what is the main character's gain then? If he wins, then she, the elder, will do everything he asks. She immediately corrected herself, saying, within reasonable limits, of course. MC asked her, is it true? Phoenix assured him that it would be so. She gives him the word of a divine beast. As the protagonist understood, Phoenix has lived here since time immemorial. Maybe she knows how to get off this island. The protagonist looked at Rain. The best way to repay her for helping him is to bring her home. So, he simply must win. It was time for the fighters to be introduced. Gaius introduced himself as a great warrior, a descendant of the divine beast Behemoth. Arata introduced himself as a human. Phoenix told them both, so as not to stain their pride, let them fight with all their might. The duel of divine beasts begins. The opponents rushed towards each other. The protagonist, having passed through the enemy's attack, jerked his head into Gaius's stomach, holding him back. Raina and Luna were very worried about their friend. The protagonist noted that his opponent was really strong. He was even stronger than Teltu. But the girls were worried about him. He shouted to them that he was fine. Gaius was furious. This couldn't be. The protagonist stopped his attack and attacked in return. The villagers watched their fight with tension. Phoenix exclaimed that Arata had once again exceeded her expectations. The protagonist concentrated and began to push Gaius back. The opponent resisted as best he could, leaving furrows on the ground from attempts to somehow slow down his backward movement. The villagers began to admire the protagonist. Someone said that this guy was something. They were amazed by his strength. Someone suggested that MC must have trained before. Arata, hearing their exclamations, thought that they were far from the truth. His body was a gift from God. He had never done sumo, but he had to win at any cost. Therefore, the protagonist, like a tank, kept pushing the enemy back. And all because this Gaius scared his companion. He will not forgive him for this. He simply must win. Gaius was angry. It was time to end this. The protagonist doubled his ramming power. The amazed residents, the spectators could see piles of earth from the furrows made by Gaius. The protagonist's allies were very worried about him. Finally, the giant's legs weakened from the enormous strain, and he collapsed to the ground. The protagonist stopped and said that he had won. Gaius could not believe his eyes. He was on the losing side. At that moment, Phoenix announced that the match was over. The winner of the duel was Arata. His allies rejoiced. Gaius, who still could not believe such an outcome of the duel, finally began to understand that he really had lost completely. The protagonist approached Raina and told her that he had returned victorious. The girl congratulated him on his return and handed him a towel. Looking at him tenderly, she was so glad that he was okay. The protagonist was pleased by her concern. She was worried about him. Luna rushed to the protagonist, hugged him, and exclaimed that her brother was cool. The protagonist barely kept his feet from her reaction. Then Aluga approached him and said that he does not choose the easy way out. Gaius, of course, is not particularly smart, but in terms of brute force, he is number one here. But he, the protagonist, took the direct route. The protagonist was surprised. The direct route? The divine beast showed him the trajectory from his opponent's legs and noted that there was no big gap in strength between them. Only a very good fighter can pull off such a thing against Gaius. MC ruffled the hair on the back of his head and muttered that it was all thanks to God. Suddenly, his opponent approached Arata. The protagonist thought in bewilderment. Will he fight again? Can't he refuse Rain? Gaius extended his hand to him, making the protagonist wary. But Arata's fears were in vain. His opponent asked the protagonist to be his friend. MC never expected this from him. Gaius continued that he respected him, and therefore, let them be friends. The protagonist smiled and shook the giant's hand, agreeing to his offer of friendship. Gaius, with a satisfied smile, summarized that they will be friends. He added that if something happens to his friend, then he should contact him. He will always help him. Arata sincerely thanked his newfound comrade. Gaius offered him to fight again. He wanted to have another duel, and this time he will not lose. All the residents began to express their desire to fight the protagonist, arguing with each other who will be the first. They wanted to test his muscles, show him their technique, and at the same time find out whose flesh is stronger. The protagonist, after some thought, agreed to fight with all those who wanted to take turns. After some time, when all his opponents were defeated, the protagonist said that he was tired. Looking around, he saw that Raina and Luna were sleeping soundly near the wall. The elder was also nowhere to be seen. She had been sleeping in her bed for a long time. The protagonist looked at his opponents and warily thought, "Is that all?" But they just came to say hello to the locals. He did not think that everything would end this way. But at least it was fun. The protagonist sat down on the ground, feeling his fatigue. The next day, after the allies returned from the village of divine beasts, Arata was sleeping soundly in a hammock. Raina, coming out of the tent, yelped. The girl noted his sweet sleep and approached him. He had a hard day yesterday. Even he would be tired of this. She gently stroked the protagonist's head and thanked him. He looked so cool yesterday. The protagonist opened one eye and saw a girl. He sleepily said, "It was her." Raina replied that if he slept for a long time, he would not be able to fall asleep at night. He noted that she was right. He got carried away. The girl asked him, "Is he okay? Maybe he was tired?" MC, stretching with pleasure, answered her that he was not tired. He just felt so good that he did not notice how he fell asleep. She calmed down, like, "Okay then." The protagonist thought that he had not rested like this for a long time. In his past life, he was constantly busy with work. Even when he came home, he could not get thoughts about tomorrow out of his head. Raina laughed. She noticed that he looked so relaxed. He told her that he was. He could not get enough of the fact that he got to this island. The girl said that it was great if he thought so. Arata smiled in agreement with her. He thought that at first, he wanted to live alone. But now, he wanted to learn more about this island and the species inhabiting it. It would be even more fun that way. Therefore, the protagonist was determined to explore this island to the end. He did not think that living alone was the quiet life he was striving for. He now wanted to continue communicating and having fun with their neighbors. He wished there were more days like this. And of course, he would do everything to help Raina. The protagonist turned to her and said that he would try to make her return home. She looked at him in bewilderment and asked him why. Arata did not expect such an answer from her. Therefore, he said in amazement, "She got here as a result of an accident, right?" Raina answered him that this is true. MC clarified with her, "Does that mean she does not want to return home?" The girl hesitated. She didn't know what to say to him. The protagonist noted that they hadn't discussed this yet. Had they? Raina replied that they hadn't. He had said several times that he wanted to live on this island, so she thought that she would help him. He remembered. It was true. Raina had never talked about returning home, and she had never tried to find a way to get out of here. Did that mean that he was the only one who was worried about this? He felt so ashamed. Arata turned around and told the girl that he would go and bury himself. Raina was against it. After some time, they were sitting at the table. Arata said that he had misunderstood her. He suggested that they then normally discuss what they would do next. The girl agreed with him. She asked him why he decided that she wanted to return home. The protagonist answered her. She sailed to this island on a royal mission and then suffered a shipwreck. That's why he thought that she wanted to return. She fell silent, then timidly said that, at first it was like that. Come to think of it, she hadn't told him about the circumstances surrounding it. The protagonist was surprised. Had something bad happened before she came here? Raina fell silent, collecting her thoughts. Then the girl told him that she was an orphan until her teacher, the first archmage among the star of the 7 magicians, took her in, making her his apprentice. After that, it was very hard for her. She was abandoned in the wild, where dangerous monsters lived. Who didn't she meet there? To survive in this place, she had to use magic until she passed out from exhaustion. She feels sick just thinking about those hellish days. That's how she became one of the 7 archmages. Raina fell silent. She thought her face was very sad. The protagonist asked her, what happened? She continued, once, she told him that she came to this island by order of the king, in search of the elixir of immortality. But she did not tell him the most important thing. She was trapped. The protagonist asked in surprise, how is that? The girl said that soon after she reached the rank of archmage, the duke of their kingdom asked her to become his court sorceress. Raina clenched her hands. It was obvious how difficult it was for her to tell this story. She continued, however, one of the strongest mages on the continent could not serve a nobleman, so she refused. But as it turned out, the Duke did not see her as a sorceress. He wanted to make her his woman. After her refusal, he began to pursue her, using all his power. Her native kingdom began to put pressure on her. They even wanted to touch the orphanage where she grew up. Thus, a situation was created where she could not refuse. So she ran away, taking advantage of the previously issued royal decree to get the elixir of immortality, which was supposed to be on this island. The protagonist said that now everything was clear to him. The girl noted that after the shipwreck, they should decide that she died and finally leave the orphanage alone. In addition, she was a little tired. The protagonist looked at her sympathetically. He thought, since early childhood, she devoted all her time to magical practice, until one day she entered the ranks of the strongest wizards. But despite her success, they did not see anything in her except that she was a woman. It was probably hard for her to accept this. In addition, no one on the island knows how difficult it is to achieve such a title. There is no one to reward her for all the hard work she has done. He turned to her and said that she had worked so hard to become an archmage, but that she had no future in it here. Raina admitted to him that she had never really wanted to become a sorceress. The sisters at the orphanage were so kind, she would have rather become one of them. Remembering this, the girl smiled. But her teacher had told her that as a sorceress, she would be much more useful to the orphanage. That was why she had tried so hard. The protagonist said that he understood her. So, she did not want to return to the continent and preferred to stay on this island? The girl confirmed that this was true. She was quite comfortable here. He did not need to worry about it. Luna and Teltu were very nice, and she had become friends with Aluga and the others. So instead of returning home, she would like to live a second life here. The protagonist smiled. He was glad of her decision. He noted that then they would live as before. The allies shook hands. Arata, looking into her eyes, thought that it hardly had any hidden meaning. A simple handshake to confirm that they remained equal friends. But he thought, continuing to hold her hand in his, that it was very important. He was sure that they both thought so. A few days later, in the morning, after waking up, the protagonist stretched sweetly and told Raina that he was going to take a walk. Would she like to go with him? The girl, showing him a book, refused his offer. She wanted to read a magical tome. The protagonist asked her in surprise, was this the same book that Wilhelmina brought as an apology for laughing at them and breaking the bathhouse? Raina laughed and told him that everything was correct, although outwardly she did not show any signs of remorse. The protagonist agreed with her in this. He remembered how the vampire answered them to their claim, so what? It's not a big loss. The girl was amazed that, despite everything, she gave her something valuable so easily. Whatever you say, she is an unusual creature. Arata asked the girl what was in this book. She answered him that it contained magic, which was considered a myth. The protagonist smiled skeptically and said that he understood everything. Raina noted that she was a mage after all. She was interested in this. Arata chuckled. He thought she didn't want to be a mage. The girl said that it was something completely different. The protagonist thought that if this thing helps protect Raina, then okay. He waved his hand at her and told her that he was going for a walk. The girl wished him a wonderful day. Coming out of the tent, MC thought that today was a wonderful day. Suddenly, he noticed that the ground began to shake and someone's stomping was heard. The protagonist thought that since the ground was shaking, it means that one of the strongest creatures is running here? And not just running, but hurrying? It was Aluga. He looked worried. He asked the protagonist, have they seen Luna? Arata answered him in surprise that she had dinner with them yesterday and then went home as usual. Did something happen? The ally answered that she had not been home since yesterday. Arata was surprised. What was he saying? Aluga wondered where she could have gone. At that moment, Raina came out of the tent. She greeted the divine beast and asked him, what happened? The protagonist answered her that Luna did not return home yesterday. Raina asked him in surprise, what was he saying? Then they should go and look for her. Aluga told them that it was their problem, but if she suddenly came here, let them tell her to go home. He said goodbye to them and ran back. The protagonist wanted to stop him, but Aluga ran away. Arata spoke in bewilderment, and what to do now? Raina answered him, shouldn't they go look for her? Luna, although a child, is a divine beast. There is hardly a monster that can harm her. What happened to her then? The protagonist decided that he would go look for her. Let Raina wait for him here. The girl replied that she would do so and wished him luck. He ran along the road the girl usually took to return home. After a while, he stopped and listened. There was no trace of Luna here. Since she hadn't returned for so long, she must have some kind of problem. Or did Luna herself not want to return? But yesterday at their dinner together, she looked as cheerful as always. No, she looked even more cheerful than usual. He remembered how during dinner she talked about Elug and Livius's upcoming wedding anniversary. Luna told him that they had decided to have a party together. The protagonist asked her, is that true? Is she really looking forward to it? The girl answered him that it was all true. And also, she wanted to prepare a gift for them, so she was going to go home early today. The protagonist became worried. These words of hers, did they mean that something happened while she was preparing the gift? Suddenly he stopped. There it was. The protagonist sensed the girl's presence. It didn't seem like she was weakening. He thanked God for this. But then why didn't she want to go home? Moving towards the source of her energy, the protagonist saw that she was sitting under a tree. He called out to her. She was surprised. Arata? What is he doing here? Coming closer to her, MC saw two small creatures sleeping next to her, similar to wolf cubs. Arata knelt down in front of her. He asked her, "Who are they?" The girl said, "Does he remember how she said yesterday that today is Aluga and Livia's wedding anniversary?" He answered her that of course he remembers it. Luna continued that she wanted to give them something. Besides, Livia said that she wanted a child. The protagonist thought, did she want to give them these wolf cubs? The protagonist asked her, "Where are the dad and mom of these babies?" The girl remained silent in response. He addressed her by name and asked her again, "Maybe they have parents?" Suddenly, she answered him irritably that this is not so, she is sure of it. When she got here, it was already too late. It was obvious that Luna was very worried and nervous. Arata asked her to calm down. He added that no one blames her for anything. But maybe she will explain everything in order? The girl told him. She went to look for a gift. She was looking for a wolf cub who separated from the pack. That's how she found them. But it turned out that their mother was already attacked by another monster. She drove him away and saved the cubs, but their mother was mortally wounded and soon died. The protagonist, listening to her attentively, said that now everything was clear to him. Luna continued. She thought that if she did nothing, other monsters would attack the cubs. At first she wanted to take them with her, but the wolf cubs did not want to leave. She told them that their mother had died, but they did not understand this. Then she had to bury Wolf Mother. And she tried to take them home again, but they still did not want to leave. Then she became afraid that they could die too, so she stayed to guard them. All this time, Luna guarded these cubs, protected them. The protagonist was touched by her action. He said that everything was clear to him. Then, Arata stroked the girl on the head and told her that she did a great job, but what will she do now? The girl answered him that she would try to talk to them again when they wake up. The protagonist was surprised. Do they understand her? Luna remarked that she did not know this. Then the protagonist asked her what kind of monsters they were. The girl told him that they were blood wolves. They would become very strong when they grew up. He said, well, an alarming thought appeared in his head. If they became very strong even by Luna's standards, one day these cubs would be dangerous. They would not harm him, but Raina would feel bad about them. Of course, Luna would not like it, but maybe they should get rid of them? Suddenly, the cubs woke up. The girl happily noted that they were not sleeping. The protagonist replied upset that they were. They had woken up. One of the cubs looked at him. Then, for some reason, they ran to the side. The girl called out to them, but they did not even turn around. The protagonist was surprised. Did something happen? Luna told him that their mother was buried there. He felt very sorry for these cubs. They crawled around the place where Luna had buried their mother and sniffed the ground. It was clear to the protagonist that these cubs would never see their mother again, and they seemed to understand it. Monsters could feel the pain of loss too. He asked the girl if she was sure she could tame them. Luna hesitantly answered that she could. The protagonist suggested that in that case, they should be allowed to say goodbye to their mother, and then they would take them home. Luna happily agreed with him. After a while, Aluga appeared. He called out to the protagonist, saying that he had already found her. Arata apologized to him for not calling him. The guy told him that it was okay. He smiled and said, besides, as he saw, he couldn't leave. On the protagonist's lap, curled up, the wolf cubs and Luna were sleeping peacefully. Aluga sat down next to them and said that they would tell him later what was what. He asked the protagonist, did Luna give him trouble? The protagonist objected that it was not so. He did not think that Luna was causing trouble. The allies looked at the sweetly sleeping girl. Arata noted that, apparently, she did not sleep last night. He would like to let her sleep, but perhaps they should not linger here. Aluga told him that it was okay. Livia was not angry with her. Instead, she was angry with him. The protagonist laughed quietly. Aluga was indignant. What's funny? The protagonist told him that he was just a good guy. The divine beast said ironically, what? Hearing a compliment from a guy is not so good. Although if a girl said something like that, a catastrophe would occur. Livia would destroy him. The protagonist asked him, is Livia jealous? Aluga kindly advised him to shut his mouth. At that moment, Luna woke up. Aluga noticed that their sleepy head had opened her eyes. The girl, half asleep, stretched out her arms to the guy, and he, sighing as if to say, nothing can be done, lifted her onto his back. The protagonist picked up the wolf cubs. The divine beast suggested that he go home, otherwise it would soon get dark. Arata agreed with him. This time, the allies did not rush through the forest at great speed, but walked with careful steps so as not to wake their load. A week had passed since Luna had taken the two blood wolf cubs. They were named Cruel and Gruel because they made different sounds. The protagonist and Raina began to communicate more often with divine beasts and ordinary beastmen. Lately, they offered them many things that made life easier. Thanks to this, the life of the protagonist and the girl began to become more civilized. One day, the protagonist offered her to build a house. The girl was surprised. A house? But why? Arata said, he is a guy, she is a girl. Probably it will be hard to stay in the same room all the time. Raina answered him perplexedly that she's ready to put up with it if it is about him. She immediately pulled herself up. She said too much. Then she noted with understanding, after all, he is a guy. It is strange that she herself did not think of it. The girl supported his idea about building a house where everyone would have a separate room. Arata objected to her. He was thinking of building 2 houses. Raina said that, in that case, they need to prepare a lot. The next day, they shared their plans with Luna and Teltu, who came to visit them. Luna exclaimed with admiration that the house is great. Teltu frowned. Her husband wants to build a house where he and Raina will live together. She is not against it, but then, she also wants a room in this house. The protagonist was surprised. What did she say? Teltu pointed her finger at him and said that it was outrageous. Building a house for 2 was like creating a love nest. It was unfair. She would also like to live next to her husband. At these words, she rushed to the protagonist and hugged him. Raina asked her, does she want another room? It can be done. Teltu said incredulously, is that true? Raina noted that Phoenix allowed them to freely dispose of this land, so they can build a bigger house. Luna exclaimed that in that case, she also wants a room for herself in their house. Raina laughed and told her that no problem. Teltu set a condition, that her room should have a high ceiling. Luna said that she wanted to put a soft bed in her room. The protagonist, listening to their whims, answered them that he would do everything in his power. A week later, next to the tent, a tall, beautiful and solid house towered. The protagonist remarked that he hadn't expected it to be that easy. He thought it would take months. Raina told him that they had used magic after all, but it was still all thanks to him that it had happened so quickly. The protagonist wondered why she was saying that. She remarked that she had left all the hard work and magic to him. She touched the wall of the high fence and said that the wall was made thanks to his earth magic. It was so strong that it could withstand even blows from Teltu and Gaius. He told her that it was all because of Wilhelmina, who had broken the bathhouse while trying to create a romantic comedy scene. He couldn't protect the house all the time, so he had made the fence strong enough to withstand a monster's attack. Raina remarked that it was true. In any case, it was all his merit. The protagonist smoothed his hair on the back of his head and admitted that she was probably right. The girl suggested that since the outside was finished, they should clean up the inside. The protagonist agreed with her. Entering the room, the protagonist told her that they could put a dining table closer to one of the corners. They would have dinner together, right? The girl told him that they would. Then he said, Teltu said that she liked to live high up, so her room would be in the attic. Raina added that Lun's room would be downstairs. Arata noted that the house absorbed vibrations, so Teltu's footsteps should not be heard. Even if more guests came to visit, they made 2 more rooms, slightly larger. Entering one of the rooms, he said that his room would be here. Raina told him that her room would be next door. They smiled at each other, satisfied with the work done. The girl looked out the window and said that it would soon get dark, so it would be better to sleep in the tent. Furniture and all other things could be arranged tomorrow. Having looked at the decoration of the tent, the protagonist thought, does this mean they are sleeping here for the last time? He remembered when he spent the first night in it with Raina. He was so nervous that he could not sleep. Tomorrow they were moving to a new house. But why did he feel strangely sad now? The protagonist sat down on the bed and thought. Raina, sitting next to him and holding a book in her hands, said a word separately. Arata asked her what she was talking about. She answered him that they could sleep here at any time if they wanted. He smiled at her and noted that it was true. A thought flashed through his head. Whether they lived in a house or in a tent, their relationship would not change. Their friendship would not be affected. Although they were more like a family. The main character told her that they could sleep together at any time. The girl was surprised by his words, and then looked at him embarrassedly. The next day, having settled all the matters on the arrangement of the new home, the protagonist noted that they had sorted out the house. Raina agreed with him. Yes, it seemed so. Suddenly the doorbell rang. The protagonist said in surprise it seemed that someone had come to them. He opened the door and Teltu flew into the house like a whirlwind. She exclaimed with delight that she had come to her husband and was congratulating him on his new home. The dragon girl hugged him, almost dropping him on the floor. Luna came in after her, congratulating him on his housewarming. Then Iluga immediately entered with a present and suggested that everyone celebrate this matter. The protagonist happily met his allies. Phoenix came to them, saying that they had a very nice house. The protagonist was surprised by her appearance. She greeted him. Arata asked her if something had happened. The elder answered him. she heard that they had finished building the house. She was just about to visit them soon. The protagonist was surprised, wanted to visit. Raina was also surprised by her arrival. The elder told them that she would like to reward them, but they should accept it without tears of joy. The protagonist was perplexed. What kind of reward? Phoenix asked him, has he already forgotten? When he defeated Gaius, she promised that she would try to help them. Arata remembered, yes, that was it. At that time, he wanted to help Raina return to the continent. Then it became unnecessary, and he forgot about the promise. He giggled stupidly. The elder asked him in bewilderment, what kind of reaction? But, be that as it may, a wonderful idea came to her mind. Suddenly, she burst into flames. Everyone stared at her in surprise. Raina noted that it was very beautiful. The elder soared up and shouted at them to save their surprise for later. Suddenly, a fiery whirlwind appeared in the sky, which gradually formed into separate parts. And at that moment, a real firebird appeared in front of the amazed allies. The protagonist said with admiration that it was Phoenix. No less surprised, Raina noted, such an unusual power. Arata thought that this was different from everything they had seen before. Moreover, this was the strongest creature he had seen on this island. Phoenix slowly and proudly soared in the sky. Then she approached the allies and said that she had decided to grant them the right to ride on her back to look at the island from the outside. The protagonist, not believing his ears, asked her what she said. Even Aluga and Luna were amazed at her offer. Phoenix admitted to them that she allowed such things very rarely. But this was a special case, because thanks to them she saw an interesting sight. Having climbed onto the bird's back, the protagonist noticed that it was not hot at all. Was this some kind of sacred fire? He looked at his friends, who were looking at them with kind envy, and asked the elder, there was enough room on her back for everyone, right? The elder laughed and exclaimed in surprise, well, he's amazing. Only he could say that. She is something like a god for the divine beasts. Does he understand that? The protagonist ironically noted that maybe it would just be hard for her to carry everyone. She objected to him that this was complete nonsense. Very well, she would give them all a ride. The elder told Aluga, Luna and Teltu to quickly jump onto her back. Aluga asked her in bewilderment what she was doing. The bird answered him that she promised the protagonist that she would do everything she could for him. Luna, not believing her luck, easily jumped onto Phoenix's back. Aluga said that he was about to go crazy. Teltu asked in a trembling voice if she could do it too. Finally, when everyone had gathered on the back of the amazing bird, she asked them if they were ready. Then they would take off. Having risen into the sky, the protagonist and Rain were almost swept away by the airflow. He asked her if she was okay. The girl assured him that she was fine. Phoenix shouted to them that they could relax and enjoy the flight. The protagonist was amazed by what he saw. Raina remarked that it was very cool. The bird asked them, well, how did they like it? The protagonist answered her with admiration that it was simply amazing. He thought enthusiastically that this was the first time he saw the island from above. It turns out that it is so big. There are so many cultures and races here, and a lot of unknown places. He looked at the happy Aluga, Luna, and Telta, as well as Raina. He was very happy that he was reincarnated in this world. MC called out to Raina and expressed his confidence that there were still many happy days ahead of them. The girl agreed with him with a happy smile. He mentally addressed the god that he was going to continue to live a happy life on this island, where the strongest creatures live. If the god hears him, please let him continue to watch over him. Meanwhile, somewhere on the continent, a meeting of the Alliance Stars of the Seven Archmages was taking place. All those gathered were dressed in black cloaks, their faces hidden by hoods. One of them, the most important one, asked his comrades, are they sure that Raina is dead? Zeros answered him that there is no doubt about it. The ship was caught in a storm, in which it is almost impossible to survive. She simply did not have a chance. The main one objected, even though she was the youngest of them. She is still one of the 7 mages. He asked, what is wrong with this kingdom? Do they really think that they can use them as their pawns? Maybe it is time to deal with them? Zeros told him not to worry. Losing a young, inexperienced archmage is not such a big problem for them. However, this unfulfilled task can damage their reputation. Silence fell, each of them thinking about their own, and only the crackling of burning candles broke this silence. Finally, Zeros said that he would go there himself. He would find the lost island and get the elixir of life. The chief agreed with his decision. Since he volunteered, let him do it, and let him not disgrace the name of their organization. Zeros grinned. Merlin said that she was worried about the fact that this idiot would go alone. Maybe she would keep him company? Lately, she was terribly tired of these boring requests and men. Zeros angrily shouted at her, who was she calling an idiot? She answered him that 1 head is good, but 2 are even better. The chief begged for his ambitions and thought that together they really had more chances. He noted that they would do so. Zeros wanted to be indignant, but Merlin interrupted him. telling him that it was time for them to go to this isolated island at the end of the world. 2 weeks had passed since the moment when the protagonist and his friends flew on the back of a bird. Lately, Gaius and other divine beasts have been visiting them often. Most of them come for Raina's food. Fearing that their share will decrease, Aluga and Luna teamed up to stop them. Some managed to break through. In general, the noisy days continued. Raina told the protagonist that they still had enough of the emperor boar meat. There was no point in their friends fighting for food. The protagonist answered her. He thought that they were having fun, so everything was fine. The girl laughed at his words. MC, sitting at the table and looking at the pastries standing on the table, thought that what really mattered was that these pork buns had been emitting such a pleasant aroma for a long time. Maybe he should try one? The protagonist reached out to take one bun. Raina sharply called out to him and told him that he couldn't do that. The protagonist even hiccuped in fear. Raina explained to him that tomorrow they were going to the village of divine beasts, and these pastries would be a gift for them. Let him be patient for a little while. Arata took the buns to the kitchen and promised Raina that he would try to control himself. She thanked him for understanding. At that moment, he saw a container of spices in the girl's hands. He asked her, "Was this a gift from the village?" Raina answered him that it was. The seasonings of divine beasts are very different from the seasonings on the continent. She thinks they can be used in new dishes. The protagonist noted that he was already anticipating how delicious it would be. He added that there is also an analog of soy sauce and miso on the continent. This is great for a Japanese. Raina asked him, was he talking about the place where he lived before? Were there similar seasonings there? He answered her that they were. The girl said that she did not know how to use them. Could he tell her about some dishes? Arata happily responded to her request. He told her that soy sauce goes well with fish and sashimi, and miso can be used to make miso soup. But he could only roughly tell how to cook them. In his past life, he was too busy with work, so he bought food at the store. Raina told him that she would then ask Livius to help her. He remarked that this was a good idea. He thought that he would look forward to miso soup from Raina. Eating delicious food, spending a relaxing holiday on an island with rich nature. This is the highest luxury. Raina asked him if it was impossible to relax in his homeland. He said that it was possible, of course, but not always. But there is no need to fight there. It is a peaceful place without monsters. It's just that all those benefits that are there, they prevent you from relaxing. The girl asked him if he was talking about the phone. She thought it was convenient to talk to people from a distance. Arata remarked that in some ways she was right, but the thought that someone could contact him at any time does not allow a person to relax. Does she understand that? Raina answered that it was. If she knew that the mentor would contact her anywhere, her hands would definitely drop. After a while, she noticed that they were ready now. The protagonist, looking at the large amount of food, told her that it was a lot. She asked him what they would do now. The protagonist thought about it and then said that he thought about it when he spoke about sashimi. They very rarely eat fish, right? The girl answered him that usually they collect edible vegetables or hunt monsters for meat, but she very rarely cooked fish dishes. Arata noted that there was a river in the forest where they could catch fish, but in order to increase the variety, they needed to come up with a way to catch sea fish. The girl admitted that he was right. They should go to the sea for now. Arriving at the seashore, they enjoyed the fresh sea breeze for a while. Raina remarked that the wind was very pleasant. Arata agreed with her. The girl said that 2 months had passed. The protagonist asked her what she was talking about. Raina replied that 2 months had passed since they had met. The protagonist laughed and admitted that this was true. He remembered how he had first met Raina on this shore. If he had not found her here, he would be living a completely different life now. The girl, noticing his thoughtful look, asked him if something was wrong. He answered that everything was fine. He just thought that his way of thinking had changed a lot in these 2 months. Raina asked him in bewilderment, was he talking about his idea that he should live alone in the wilderness? The protagonist was surprised. How did she guess that? Raina giggled and noted that they spent every day together, so she began to understand him better and better. He said her name with affection. The girl distracted him with a question. Will they think about how to catch fish? The protagonist exclaimed that he had almost forgotten about it. The first thing they need to do is make a fishing rod. Suddenly, he asked the girl, what is this? Are there some people lying on the shore? The protagonist rushed to them, asking them if they are okay. Running up to the people, he exclaimed that they are not breathing. MC turned to the girl, saying that he will help Zeros and let her take care of Merlin. Noticing that the girl froze in place, he called out to her again. She seemed to wake up and answered him that she will take care of the girl. Arata began to give the guy artificial respiration, and after a short time he started coughing, came to his senses. The protagonist noted that this is good, so he is already okay. MC asked the girl how she is doing. Raina used a discharge of magical lightning on Merlin. The protagonist looked at her actions in bewilderment. Raina noted that this would not be enough, then she would give her another discharge. She was going to use her ability again, but the protagonist stopped her. What was she doing? She was surprised. What do you mean? This is a regular reanimation. Arata was indignant. This is not reanimation. She will finish her off now. Raina irritably answered him not to meddle in what he does not understand. It is natural for wizards to revive each other in this way. Of course, the probability of success is small, but this is the norm. The protagonist, having calmed down, noted that he understood everything. Raina used magical reanimation again, but Merlin showed no signs of life. Arata again stopped his companion like, "That's enough already." Raina obediently stepped aside and stood next to him. The main character said, "Rest in peace." His ally objected that the girl was alive. At that moment she coughed, and Raina noted quite contentedly, "Does he see?" Although she was not at all happy about it. The protagonist was surprised. "What do you mean? Does she know them?" Raina told him with a sad face that, unfortunately, that was the case, and she would prefer to never meet them again. This guy is the deadly flame Zero's grinder, and the girl is the holy water Merlin Marin. They are the 6th and 5th seats of the Star of the 7 Archmages. They are both higher in rank than her. The allies brought the injured to their house. Arata said that it was good that they made a guest room in advance. Raina told him sadly that he was right. As he had already understood, these two are also part of her organization, and they are of a higher rank than her. Unlike her, who recently became an archmage, these two have been an archmage for over 20 years. They are definitely better than her. MC was surprised. 20 years? But they don't look that old. She explained to him that an archmage can remain young through magic control. Now they are both in their 50s. The protagonist exclaimed in amazement, "What? Magic is such an amazing thing." They looked like they were in their early 20s. Raina added that she came there as a newbie, so they were all older than her, and she was not very warmly welcomed at the Star of the 7 Archmages. Although, in principle, there is no particular sense of camaraderie there. Everyone only thinks about how to increase their rank, therefore she does not feel affection for them. The protagonist noted that he understood everything. Raina continued, "If she were stronger, she would not have to worry about this." The protagonist looked at her in surprise and asked the girl, "Does it not matter now?" She asked him in bewilderment. What was he talking about? Arata answered her that no one on this island knows about the Star of the 7 Archmages. To the locals, she is just Raina. She looked at him in surprise. He misunderstood her concern. The girl wanted to tell him something, but at that time he noticed that it seemed that their guests had woken up. She said dejectedly, "It seemed so." He knocked on the door, warned them that he was coming, and entered the room. The protagonist asked them how they were feeling. Zeros and Merlin looked at him warily. The protagonist thought that in their place, he would probably be wary too. At that moment, Zeros exclaimed, "What, Raina?" Merlin asked her in amazement, "So she was alive?" Raina calmly answered them, addressing them by name, that they had not seen each other for a long time. After a while, the four of them were sitting at the table. The protagonist told them that he heard about them from Raina, and yet, maybe they should introduce themselves to each other normally? Merlin told him that he was right, but first she wanted to know, were they the ones who saved them? She bowed her head and thanked them. Zeros irritably called out to his ally, the protagonist, and Raina looked at him in confusion. He realized that he had made a mistake and also bowed his head, thanking them. The protagonist replied that their gratitude was accepted. He thought, looking at them, were these two really as bad as Raina said? Zeros noted that now it was time for them to introduce themselves. He is the deadly flame Zero's grinder. He ranks 6th in the Star of the 7 Archmages. The girl introduced herself to him as Holy Water. Merlin Marine, she is the 5th in the Star of the 7 Archmages. The protagonist told them his name and noted that it was nice to meet them. He explained to them that he had appeared on this island about 2 months ago and had been living here ever since. The protagonist asked them if he thought Raina needed no introduction. Zeros answered that she did, although he thought that she was already dead. Merlin asked MC, "What kind of island is this?" He thought, even if he told them everything as it is unlikely that they will believe him. Suddenly, he felt a change in the aura. The protagonist thought that it was not stopping. Arata apologized to Raina and asked her if she could explain to their guests what kind of island this was. The girl told him that she would do it without any problems. He apologized to the guests and added that he needed to leave for a while. Zeros answered him in bewilderment that they understood everything. The protagonist left them and went out of the house. Noticing a dragon in the sky, he muttered, he knew it. It was Teltu flying. She addressed him as her husband, hugged him, and said, "Here she is." The protagonist again barely kept his feet from her pressure. He, laughing, noted that she was full of energy as always. She exclaimed, continuing to hug him, that it was so, and why not? Suddenly, Teltu pulled away from him and indignantly exclaimed that he smelled like a woman, and it was not Raina or Luna. He has a new woman? The protagonist tried to calm her down and explained to her what was going on. After a while he finished saying, well, something like that. Teltu said thoughtfully that this island was covered by a barrier created by a god. Visitors from outside were a rarity. Even the appearance of him, her husband, was considered an unprecedented event. In addition, for the first time in the long history of the island, so many people had appeared here. Perhaps something was happening to the barrier of this place. The protagonist noted that he had already been told about this. He remembered his conversation with Aluga when he asked him how to leave this island. Teltu added that they could not overcome the power of a god. Arata became interested. The power of a god? Judging by what Aluga had told him, this was not the god who had reincarnated him. Even creatures of the rank of a vampire were securely locked here. This was a very powerful barrier. If a flaw appeared in such a barrier, no one could fix it except the local god. Protagonist turned to the interlocutor and asked her, even if the barrier stopped working properly, is it really that bad? Teltu, after thinking for a while, said that, in principle, if you think about it, maybe everything is not so bad. She is not interested in the outside world, and she does not think that there are many creatures on the island who would want to go there. The protagonist noted that, well, of course, there are bound to be violent creatures here who want to be naughty. He will try to stop them if the situation gets out of control. Arata noted that now anyway, there is no point in racking his brains over the barrier. It is time for him to return home. Arata asked the dragon girl, would she like to have dinner with them? She threw herself on his neck, exclaiming that she agreed. She really wanted meat. The protagonist chuckled, sat her on his back, and said, they will ask Rain to cook them meat. Approaching his house, he saw Merlin and Zeros at the threshold. MC asked them in surprise, are they done yet? Zeros, ruffling the hair on the back of his head, answered him that it was so. You could say so. Teltu asked the protagonist in amazement, are these those people? Zeros and Merlin immediately reacted negatively to the dragon girl and took a fighting stance. The protagonist asked them, what's the matter? Zeros asked him in bewilderment, what kind of monster is this? The Hellfire dragon that the three of them defeated, compared to her, looks like a baby. She has an incredible amount of magic power. They are in bad shape. At first, Arata did not understand what they were talking about. Then, guessing that they meant Teltu, he said, that's it. They can calm down, she's not a bad girl. Suddenly, the protagonist felt Teltu use her terrifying magic power. Merlin cursed, what an ominous power. Zeros was surprised. How much energy does this monster have? The protagonist reproachfully asked Teltu what she was doing. She laughed and told him that she was just having fun. Finally, the ancient dragon began to be feared and respected. She simply began to mock the visitors, showing them all the horrors of her demonic energy. Finally, the protagonist told her that he can't stand girls who behave like that. Teltu was surprised. What did he say? In the blink of an eye, she turned into the very personification of politeness, ran up to Zeros and Merlin, and apologized to the dear guests. She shook their hands and noted that she was glad they visited their modest island. She welcomed them with all her heart. The guests wondered what was going on. Was she staying here? Teltu, turning to Arata, told him that he saw that they got along well. MC reminded her that these two were Rain's acquaintances. Let her try to befriend them. Teltu assured him that she would do so. He called her to him and stroked her head. Merlin spoke in bewilderment. What a sight! Zeros was surprised. Is the protagonist also a monster? At that moment, Raina came out to them and turned to her acquaintances. As they can see, she told them about it. The protagonist called her by name. Raina apologized to him and noted that she tried to explain to their guests about the island, but they did not believe her. Zeros objected to her, as if anyone would believe her. MC noted that he was right about that. He asked them what they planned to do next. Zeros told him that they wanted to create a base and gradually explore everything, but if this island was really like that, they should be more careful. Arata thought about it. He asked Raina if they could somehow help them. The girl reproachfully answered him that he was too kind. Then she turned to her acquaintances and told them that she had a small tent. She could give it to them, and she would also give them a week's supply of food. After that, they would be left to their own devices. Merlin thanked her for her concern. Zeros apologized to her. Raina answered them with embarrassment that she simply could not sleep, knowing that somewhere under the open sky, one of her acquaintances could die. Nothing more. The protagonist thought with a smile that his ally was kinder than she seemed. After some time, the protagonist noticed that it seemed that the two had decided to settle a little away from them. He thought they would settle closer. Raina assumed that they were probably upset that she showed mercy to them, although she was lower in rank. The protagonist peacefully noted that having ended up on an island, cut off from the outside world, why not throw all this away and think more carefree? Raina looked at him in bewilderment. He asked her if something was wrong. The girl answered him resignedly that he was the only one on this island who could afford to think like that. Arata was surprised. Really? But it looks like they have new neighbors. It's so exciting. Raina smirked skeptically, saying that only Arata could treat archmages like that. The protagonist, looking at her with a smile, said, "After all, no one on this island knows about their star. Here, she is just Raina." She thought for a moment, and then noted with a smile that he was right. The title of one of the 7 archmages on this island means nothing. The protagonist was pleased with her answer. Teltu suggested that they go hunting before dinner. Arata was not against her offer. Raina asked them to bring them good ingredients so that she could cook something delicious. Teltu enthusiastically answered her that they would not let her down. The protagonist promised her that they would catch something big. After saying goodbye to the girl, they went hunting. Raina wished them luck. After seeing her allies off, she decided to start preparing for dinner. That night, the protagonist and Raina were sitting on the porch of their house. They thought about how great it was to watch the night sky while relaxing in the yard and enjoying snacks. The protagonist noticed that while hunting with Teltu in the forest, he didn't feel Zeros and Merlin anywhere. He wondered where they had gone. Raina answered him. After she gave them the tents, they headed to the river. Arata was surprised. To the river? But why did they go there? They could get flooded if it rained. She said so herself, didn't she, when they were choosing a place for the tent? Will they be okay? Raina remarked. What would happen to them? Merlin is there, after all. The protagonist wondered if she was that good. The girl confirmed that she was. A great sorceress, ranked 5th in the star of the 7 archmages. She is undoubtedly the best water mage on the continent. She thought that they were well aware of the dangers of this island. Considering Merlin's specialization, she chose a rather convenient place. She, Raina, knows only one mage who could defeat her on the riverbank. She was silent for a while, and repeated again that she knows only one mage who could defeat Merlin. The protagonist, noticing her emotions, asked her what kind of look was that. The girl said that his power was beyond common sense. He thought ironically to himself that he was such a peculiar outcast of the human race. Raina sighed, making it clear that the conversation was over. She was going to take a bath. The protagonist approved of her idea and thought about it. Still, he considered Raina an amazing sorceress. But she says that Merlin is stronger and Zeros is about the same level. He could only guess what would happen next. But he hoped that they would get along after all. At that moment, he noticed a silhouette in the night sky. Wilhelmina, descending towards him, remarked that it seemed like they were having fun again. The protagonist said it was her again. The vampire was indignant. Only he and Luna could talk to her like that. She sat on the fence and asked him why there was this stupid wall here. Arata said sternly, probably to fence himself off from those who wanted to break the wall in the bathroom and make a romantic comedy. It was a necessary countermeasure. The vampire was surprised. Hadn't she already gotten inside? He answered her ironically that it was true, she could fly, but he wouldn't let her destroy the house or the wall. The vampire grinned at his words. Really? Maybe they'll check? She threw the crystal at the fence, but it bounced off like a ball. There wasn't even a crack in the wall from its impact. The vampire was surprised. Was that possible? The protagonist mentally rejoiced. She cursed, and then asked him how much stupid magic they put into this wall. The protagonist thought that she was interested in Raina now. But Raina was taking a bath right now. That was suspicious. He asked her. She always shows up at the right time, right? Did she really set up a bug here? She looked at him in surprise. She didn't understand what he was talking about. But why do that if you can use farsight magic? The protagonist indignantly exclaimed that he knew it. Now he understood why she always comes when Raina is taking a bath. The vampire laughed and remarked, "Isn't it obvious? She comes here to embarrass Raina." Arata told her that she has a bad magic hobby. She confessed to him that normally she would have just torn down the wall in the bathroom, but today she felt that there was someone new on this island. Maybe it was someone from their race? MC understood who she was asking about. He noted that there was nothing to hide from her. The vampire chuckled and told him that before they appeared here, something strange was happening with the barrier. She had felt the same thing recently, so she decided to go to them. The protagonist said that he understood. He thought that maybe she was worried about them in her own way. Wilhelmina continued. Besides, there was probably something comedic in the story. Let him tell her quickly. Arata thought with irony that he was taking back his words about her worry. He told her about what happened. After his story, she noted, "So people have entered here again? So she has new toys?" The protagonist was indignant. Was she planning something strange again? She answered negatively, but she would have to come up with something interesting. The protagonist muttered that he could actually hear her. He asked her not to cause trouble for anyone. She laughed and said that she had no intention of doing so. Arata realized that the vampire thought that there was nothing wrong with embarrassing people. Her feelings seemed to be very different from theirs. He said out loud that this was part of her personality. The vampire chuckled again. Did he think that he understood her? The protagonist believed that he did. They were all different, although they might seem similar. True vampires, divine beasts, demons, great spirits, each race had their own way of life. She noted that it was a mistake to think that they could understand each other. He noted that she was right. The protagonist understood that even one species on one planet could not live in peace. Everyone had different values. Moreover, the creatures living on this island were especially selfish due to their strength. The protagonist exclaimed that it didn't mean they couldn't get along. The vampire looked at him in surprise and noted that it was true. They spoke the same language, they could think about each other, sympathize, and even accept each other. They were able to be friends, even if they belonged to different species. He was touched by the girl's speech. She immediately made a sly face and asked him if Raina should not have gotten out of the bath already. The protagonist thought dejectedly that he had begun to forget who he was talking to. She turned any topic into a romantic comedy. He answered her that he didn't know. Wilhelmina was surprised. Was he serious? He didn't need to pretend. He could easily feel what was happening in the bath. He just needed to concentrate. He could see her getting dressed as if it were happening in real life. Wasn't that a normal male reaction? The protagonist was indignant. He wouldn't do that. She smirked. Really? So he doesn't deny that he can do it? At that moment, he heard Rain's voice behind him. She asked him in amazement, could he really do something like that? He began to justify himself to her in a panic. He was capable, but he wasn't going to do it. The vampire asked him ironically, really? But would a normal, healthy guy be able to reason rationally when there was a beautiful girl next to him? The protagonist irritably asked her to shut her mouth. She laughed. How nervous he was. Did she really guess? With that, she left them alone and flew away. Arata was beside himself with anger. This vampire was not just a thorn, but a real aspen stake in a certain place. Rain, laughing, told him that she would like to continue the conversation. The protagonist sighed dejectedly. It looks like this night will be long. But he didn't do anything. The next day, he apologized to Rain for yesterday. She told him that it was okay. He had told her everything honestly. And if he was going to do something like that, he would have done it already, right? He hesitated with an answer. She continued so that he would not worry about it anymore. Arata thought that he was glad that she trusted him, but he thought that she should be more careful. He remembered how they slept in the same tent, how she told him about the house. He was a guy, after all. Raina turned to him and asked him to listen to what she had to say. If he was not by her side, she was not sure that she would be able to survive on this island. At night, she could set up a barrier, but she did not think that it would be effective against the monsters here. It was not enough for her to sleep peacefully. But as long as he was here, the monsters would not come too close. So she valued him very much. The protagonist thought that he understood that. The monsters here really recognized their difference in strength. They stopped approaching him, as they had at first. In other words, he was like a mosquito coil for her. It seemed that Raina did not perceive him as a man, that was for sure. Otherwise, she would not have slept with him in the same tent. But if his presence helped her to sleep well, then he would be glad to reassure her. He said, addressing Raina, that so far she had taken good care of him. She should not worry, everything was fine. She told him that she was glad to hear it. After breakfast, he went for a walk. Teltu told him that the monsters here remembered his scent. They would not come near their house. He would walk through the forest to show them that this was his territory. By the way, how are Zeros and Merlin? Raina said that they were camped by the river. They had only arrived here yesterday. He needed to check on them. He looked around and noticed that the forest was not so dense here. They were probably somewhere nearby. Having found them, he stopped dead in his tracks in surprise. The guests stood in a fighting stance, and a water dragon raged next to them. He asked them what they were doing. At that moment, Luna called out to him. The protagonist was surprised to see Aluga and Luna. But what were they doing here? Luna told him that they came to play. The protagonist asked them what that meant. He turned to Aluga and asked him what was going on here. Aluga explained to him that they were going to visit them as usual. Luna smelled an unfamiliar smell and suddenly ran away. So they found themselves in this situation. It became clear to the protagonist. Did their guests think that his friends had attacked them? He asked his allies, did they do anything to Zeros and Merlin? Luna told him that they had not touched them. Aluga confirmed that they had not done anything. He turned to the guests and told them to calm down. Those two would not do anything to them. Zeros objected to him. They don't believe at all that they are not threatened when such monstrous magical power emanates from them. MC thought, what to do? At that moment, a huge bird of prey appeared above them, similar to a rooster. All five of them stared at it in amazement. The protagonist said, a rooster? Zeros, beside himself with anger, shouted, what the hell is this? Are they kidding? The monsters here look more ferocious than the Hellfire Dragon. The stunned protagonist asked Luna, who is this? The girl, looking carnivorously at the rooster, said that it is a Shantak bird. MC noticed, judging by her reaction, this bird has tasty meat. Meanwhile, the bird was scanning them. The protagonist was positioned as a 3-star danger, like Aluga and Luna, divine beasts. Humans were 1-star danger. The bird intended to attack the weaklings. Zeros exclaimed, what? No way. Merlin shouted that she was ranked 5th in her organization. Don't underestimate Merlin's holy water. Zeros also exclaimed that he was ranked 6th in the Star of the 7 Archmages. He was Zero's deadly flame. He would burn that monster to ashes. The protagonist noted that Raina was the same. Is it so important for Archmages to always say their name? Seeing the enemy gaining momentum, he exclaimed that he couldn't watch this anymore. The protagonist shouted for Zeros and Merlin to run away, but at that moment Luna flew past him like a bullet. With a cry that this was her meat, she grabbed Shantak with a death grip. The bird clearly didn't expect such an attack. Arata couldn't see anything from below, but he was sure that Luna would knock everything out of the enemy, both necessary and unnecessary. Finally, they both fell. Luna, smiling happily, said that now this meat is Luna. Zeros and Merlin were surprised. Did she help them? The protagonist answered them that it was so. At least everything ended well. Aluga still doubted that it was so. The protagonist asked the guests if they were okay. They answered him that they were fine, thanks to them. Arata noted that their guests looked sick. Their symptoms were similar to those of Rain. They probably got sick from Luna's magic. He told them that he would monitor the surroundings, and they both could rest in the tent for now. The Archmages thanked him for the care he showed them and went to their tents. Aluga asked the protagonist in surprise if they were okay. The protagonist answered him that Raina had already gotten used to their magical power. He hoped that they would get used to it too. Aluga said that they would try to be careful. But if they were so weak, maybe they should think about protecting them. Protagonist noted that he would talk to Raina about it. In fact, Aluga did not care what would happen to them. But if they decided to take responsibility for them, they would help them. The protagonist smiled and thanked him for his responsiveness. He asked him, since they were at the river, would they like to go fishing while their guests were relaxing? The divine beasts happily responded to his offer. Arata enjoyed fishing. He noticed the trees swaying in the wind, the sound of the river, how nice it was to be in nature. This was the ultimate pleasure. Aluga grumbled that there were no bites here at all. Luna also said disappointedly that she had not caught anything either. The protagonist answered them that the essence of fishing is not only in catching fish. Let them just relax and enjoy themselves like he did. Luna objected that this game was too boring. He chuckled and decided to help his allies. There was nothing he could do. He needed to sharpen his senses and look at the bottom of the river. Concentrating, he imagined the bottom of the river. After a while, he opened his eyes and told his allies that the fish was there. Luna was delighted by his message. She exclaimed that she was going to catch it now. Aluga also said that he was going there. The protagonist thought that he would just wait for them here while they fished. Suddenly, he realized that he was also getting a bite. Apparently, it was a big fish. In that case, he would never let it go. The protagonist began to pull the fishing rod towards himself, and something big flew past him and plopped down on the ground. He thought in surprise, a fugu fish? They should not be in the river. Coming closer to the catch, he thought in bewilderment that it was indeed big, but it was not a fish. He caught something that looked like an elf. After a while, Raina, laughing, asked if she could ask him something. The protagonist, looking guilty, answered her that she could do it. The girl noted that he had simply gone for a walk in the forest. Then why were they having new problems? In the guest room, Katima, whom he had caught with a fishing rod, was lying on the bed. Aluga was standing next to her, looking at her thoughtfully. Meanwhile, the protagonist was making excuses to Raina. He was resting and leisurely fishing, and then he had caught her. Raina sighed and said that he was a fun person. Okay, she would think about her later. Now she had to cook dinner. The protagonist, exhaling that everything had worked out, told Raina that they just happened to have a fresh chicken. At that moment, Luna pounced on him and objected to giving the bird for dinner. She hadn't shown her catch to Telt yet, so this bird couldn't be eaten. The protagonist apologized to her with a sigh. Luna continued that they would show the catch to Telt and then eat it all together. Raina smiled and noted that they had caught a lot of fish today, so today she would focus on fish dishes. The protagonist was not against it. Luna, looking at the tubs of fish, turned to Raina with pity. The girl asked her what was wrong. Luna asked her, would they eat the fish she had caught? Raina answered her that it was so, that was why she was here. Luna sadly said that she understood. They would eat it. The protagonist understood the girl's emotions. She had become attached to the fish she had caught. But he thought that it was normal. She was still young. For her, it was a chance to realize the value of life. But the girl at that moment looked at the catch in such a way that the protagonist thought he was taking his words back. The protagonist entered the room where Katima was lying. Aluga was sitting on a chair near the bed. Arata asked him, was everything okay? The guy answered him that it was. It seems that she is fine, just sleeping. MC calmed down. Aluga told him, judging by the appearance, the girl he caught was an Earlf. The surprised protagonist asked him again, an Earlf, not an elf? Aluga noted that they were very similar. But now they live in different parts of the island. They call them that, so as not to confuse them. As you can see, the elves are distinguished by the fact that their skin has a dark shade. Arata noticed, so that's how it is. The guy continued that not only do they live in different places, but they also believe in different spirits. The elves settled in the forest, and the earls in the mountains. The protagonist asked him what spirits they worshipped. Iluga explained to him that the elves believe in the spirits of light, water, and wind. And the earls, in the spirits of darkness, fire, and earth. It's not that the spirits don't get along with each other, and it's not that the two races are on bad terms, but they, the tribe of divine beasts, interact normally with the elves, but don't get along very well with the elves. The protagonist asked him in surprise, "Is this true?" Iluga answered him that it was the absolute truth. He remembered their elder phoenix? Well, the elves believe in a great spirit of fire that has similar powers. A long time ago there was an argument about this. Since then they have been hostile to them. The protagonist thoughtfully drawled that everything was clear to him. Iluga added that it was 1,000 years ago, so perhaps it was no longer relevant. Arata asked again incredulously, 1,000 years? At that moment, Katima woke up. She sat up in bed, rubbed her eyes, looked around. She asked them in surprise, "Where is she?" The protagonist answered her that she is at their house. She said that something else was important to her now. She wanted to eat. When the allies sat her down at the table and Raina brought her fish, Katima greedily attacked the food, gobbling up one fish after another. Luna watched in surprise as her fish disappeared from the plate. Then she exclaimed, "Challenge accepted." Luna attacked her prepared catch with the same greed. Raina noted that they had an amazing appetite. Iluga noted that they had eaten their share too. The protagonist laughed. Raina asked the protagonist, so their guest's name was Katima? He answered her that it was true. She was from the elf tribe that lived in the mountains in the north. The girl was surprised. How did a girl living in the mountains end up in the river? Arata assumed that she was hungry, so she dove into the river to catch a fish, but her leg cramped. Raina was puzzled. Was she so clumsy? The protagonist noted that this is why you always need to warm up a little before swimming. At this time, both girls were lying under the table with full stomachs, and were happy that they were feeling good. Raina told them that lying under the table after eating was bad manners. They got up. Katima said that she had eaten her fill, and now she wanted to sleep. Luna also wanted to take a nap. The protagonist told them that it was already late. Let Katima stay with them for the night. Luna noted that she would stay too. The protagonist was not against it. He turned to Iluga. Did he mind if Luna stayed with them? Iluga answered him, as they wished. The protagonist asked the girls, then why don't they go up to their rooms? Raina giggled at these words. Arata was surprised. What was she doing? She answered that he now looked like their father. He laughed with her and asked her, then she is like a mother to them? Girl was surprised, mother? She immediately drew a rosy picture in her mind, where she and the protagonist, like mother and father, are surrounded by Teltu, Katima, and Luna. MC muttered that he was just continuing the joke. Iluga turned to them and noted that he was, of course, happy for them, but those two were about to collapse. Luna and Katima, indeed, could barely stand on their feet. The protagonist came to his senses and said that he would carry them into the house. Raina said, let him be so kind as to do so. Iluga, watching them, thought that they were still quite young. Having put the girls to bed, the protagonist left the room and informed the allies that he had put them to bed. Raina was frying something on the stove. He asked her, what was that smell? Didn't they eat all the fish? Iluga chuckled. It was predictable. So he hid his catch. Protagonist smiled and praised him for his intelligence. Raina, serving the food, noted that she had prepared a slightly more adult dish, fish fried in oil, served with a side dish. She asked them, well, how was it? The protagonist admired the aroma and appearance of the dish. Iluga also noticed that the dish gave off a smell, delicious to the point of pain. Raina worriedly asked him, he won't scream, will he? The children had just fallen asleep. He told her that he would try, but he didn't know if he could do it. Arata dreamily said, this dish would go with wine. Iluga agreed with him. Raina smiled and said that it could be arranged. Using her magical storage, she presented them with wine in glasses. The protagonist and Iluga were surprised. Where did all this come from? Arata reproachfully told her he couldn't believe that she hid the wine. Raina protested. She didn't mean to hide it, it's just that there isn't that much of it, so she saved it for a special occasion. MC suggested his friends to throw a party for adults. Having filled the glasses, he proposed a toast to their health. Having taken a sip, the protagonist was surprised to notice it was so easy to drink and so refreshing. What a good wine. Although, he didn't really understand them. Iluga, having also taken a sip of wine and having tasted the food, turned purple and tensed up. The protagonist could have sworn that he was desperately holding back from screaming. Raina, having tried the drink, noted that it was delicious. It was not for nothing that she opened this wine. Arata confirmed that this was exactly so. Iluga again noted that they were like young people. The protagonist was indignant. What did this mean? Suddenly, Raina turned to him and told him to look at the sky. At that time, a starfall began in the sky. The allies noted that it was very beautiful. The protagonist enjoyed the moment. The girls slept soundly. He and his friends sat so comfortably at dinner. And now, next to the allies, they admired the stars in complete silence. Arata said that he liked noisy feasts, but sometimes he wanted to arrange something like that. Raina agreed with him. The next day, Arata woke up very early, went outside, stretched sweetly, and noticed that the morning air was so pleasant. Suddenly, he saw Katima in front of him. He noted that it was her. The girl was also surprised to see him so early. He greeted her and asked her if she got up early. Katima answered him that she did. It was nice to watch the rays of the morning sun break through the foliage. She really likes to sunbathe in the morning. He answered her that everything was clear to him. She apologized to him for yesterday. The protagonist was surprised. What was she talking about? Was she talking about him saving her life? He told her not to worry about it. The girl objected. No, the earls don't forget such things. And she ate so much yesterday, although it was their fish. He smiled and said, let her bring something to Luna next time. She had caught most of that fish. The girl replied that she would repay him in kind. But he had saved her. Could she help him with anything? The protagonist asked for a minute to think, and then said, her race lives in the mountains, right? She answered him in bewilderment that it does. There are many spirits of fire, earth, and darkness in the mountains. That's why she and her other relatives feel comfortable there. The protagonist asked her if good food could be found there, perhaps. The girl replied that there was plenty of it. The mountains are the source of life, MC asked. In that case, when they decide to go to the mountains, is it okay if they take some? She didn't mind. The girl added that she would tell the elder about it. He saved Kadim. The earls are in his debt. She expressed her confidence that the Great Spirit would accept him. He said that then, they would visit them soon. At that moment, Raina and Luna came out of the house. Raina greeted them. Luna asked them what they were talking about. The protagonist greeted them back and briefly recounted his conversation with Katim. After a while, when he finished his story, he summed up, this is what they talked about. Raina answered him that everything was clear to her. And why not? She still had some ingredients left, but she thought that they could use more vegetables. Katim told them that in the mountains where they live, there are many gifts of nature. Some of the plants they grow themselves. Raina asked her with interest, so they have something similar? Katima suggested that she ask. She will answer her. Arata thought that their conversation would last a long time. He told Luna that he would go to the river to wash himself. Would she go with him? Luna, looking at how Raina and Katima were enthusiastically talking about food, answered him that she would go with him. On the way, Luna noticed what they had for breakfast. The protagonist answered her that he was also looking forward to it. Approaching the river, Arata heard strange sounds. Coming closer, he saw that Zeros was training. The protagonist greeted him. The guy was surprised by their arrival, like, oh, is it him? Zeros looked warily at Luna.